Chapter 181. Boss, I don't agree with what you are doing. Listening to the voice of Moses Adams over the phone, Jiang Hai lay on the bed weakly. When he got out of Chi Li's car, it was actually quite far from his home, about 10 kilometers away. Today was New Year's Eve, and there were no taxis on the streets at this time. If it was a good day, 10 kilometers was actually not very far for Jiang Hai. With his physical fitness, he could run there in more than an hour. But today was different. The ground of Ice City was very slippery, and it had been snowing for the past 2 days. It was difficult to walk on the ground, let alone run. He was embarrassed to call his friends. After all, they were also celebrating New Year's Eve at home. So Jiang Hai walked for more than 3 hours before he returned home. Fortunately, he could recognize the north and south. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go home. When he got home, even with his strong physical fitness, he was very tired. He took off his clothes and shoes and lay on the bed. But he still remembered what he had to do, which was to apply for a divorce. But as soon as he finished talking to Moses Adams directly voted against it. What? I'd rather give her half of the manor. Although he was very reluctant in his heart, Jiang Hai was now determined. If he didn't make a decision, he would suffer. He now deeply understood the saying, if you don't make a decision, you will suffer. No, this has nothing to do with the manor. I know what you mean, but this has nothing to do with money. Do you still remember the girls in your manor? 8 employees and 2 adopted girls. Hearing Jiang Hai's slightly angry words, Moses Adams said seriously. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai also calmed down. When you adopted these 2 girls, you approved it because you were married. And those girls, you could only hire them because you were married. If you divorce at this time, then I'll let them down. I'll find better jobs for them. As for Delina and Marion, there's nothing I can do. Hearing Moses Adams's hesitant words, Jiang Hai sighed. This marriage was like a sword hanging over his head. He was completely at a loss. Now, in order to get rid of this sword, even if he had to give up half of his fortune, he would do it. It's not just the problem of these girls staying. Because the time you adopted them is too short, it's easy to be labeled as fraud by those politicians. If you really divorce, the judicial department will intervene and investigate the source of your property. Because your nationality is still Wuxia, you don't have to worry about being put in prison, but you are likely to be sent back to China, and your property in the United States, that is, the manor, will be confiscated. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams made it clear. Of course, what he said was only the worst-case scenario, but who could guarantee what would happen in reality? F***ck not giving me a single cent. What should I do now? Hearing what Moses Adams said, Jiang Hai couldn't help swearing. It was said that the barefooted were not afraid of those with shoes. Originally, Jiang Hai was barefooted, but now the problem was that he had already put on shoes. Giving half of his fortune to Chi Li was already like a knife stabbing his heart. If he didn't have a single cent, then what was the point of living? In fact, this is easy to do. In fact, if you want a divorce now, it's best to find a marriage partner first. After you divorce here, you can get married in the United States immediately. If there is no gap in between, then it won't be very troublesome for us to operate. As expected of a lawyer, he gave Jiang Hai bad ideas. Find someone to marry? With Jiang Hai's brain capacity, there was not a single woman in his mind that was suitable. But this seemed to be the only way at present. Then that's it for now. Wait until I go back. Since he couldn't discuss with Moses Adams, Jiang Hai couldn't help but lean on the bed. His eyes looked at the ceiling, and he began to recall the women who had appeared around him. First, he thought of the women who had slept with him. Maggie was definitely out of the question. The watch girl whose name he didn't know was also out of the question. He didn't even remember her name. As for Feng Yunshin, whom he met after he came back, he was a little moved when he thought of her. But as she said, she wasn't ready to be a partner with Jiang Hai. And with her background, she could be Jiang Hai's lover, but Jiang Hai wouldn't agree to be the legal wife. In addition to the 3 of them, Jiang Hai also knew other women. The 8 women in the manor were definitely not good enough. Although he pitied the birth of these girls, he wasn't going to find a professional one. Daliana and Marion, damn, they were his own girls. He wasn't a demon beast, how could he be a playboy? In addition to these girls, it seemed that there was only one person he knew who could be his marriage partner, Clive. Looking at the white ceiling, he seemed to see Clive's face. Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. He really didn't think about this before, but now that he thought about it, this girl was really a good partner to be friends with. Thinking about Clive, she had the looks and height, and she was a primary school teacher. In this way, even if he had a child with her in the future, he didn't even need to consider the issue of education. Although he didn't have much contact with her personality, in Jiang Hai's opinion, her personality was also very good. Such a good girl is right beside me, but I didn't notice. Recalling Shtwenny Clive, Jiang Hai chuckled. Originally, Jiang Hai didn't think about it too much, and he didn't pay too much attention to Shtwenny Clive. But now that he thought about it, he really felt that this girl was really good. At least in his opinion, she didn't have any shortcomings. She was full of good points. If he really could marry her, it would be a good choice. Since I've decided to try, how should I pursue her? Originally, Jiang Hai had never thought about this problem. Speaking of which, he had never pursued a girl before. Now that he was suddenly asked to pursue a girl, he didn't know what to do. As he turned on the TV and watched the annual New Year's gala, Jiang Hai picked up his phone. Would it be too abrupt if I call her directly? Why don't I try sending a text message first? Jiang Hai looked at Shtwenny Clive's contact information on his phone. After hesitating for a moment, he sent a greeting first. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no reply. Just as Jiang Hai felt that he was overthinking, his phone rang. Sorry, I was in class just now. Are you still in Wuxia? Looking at the newly received text on his phone, Jiang Hai let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, he remembered that although it was already midnight in Wuxia, it was still noon in Boston. Yeah, I'm still in Wuxia. I hope I didn't disturb your class. Looking at the text message from Shtwenny Clive, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment before replying to her. This time it didn't take long before Shtwenny Clive replied. Seeing Shtwenny Clive's reply, Jiang Hai immediately typed. However, after all, the two had only met a few times and weren't very familiar with each other. Therefore, after a few sentences, Jiang Hai didn't know what to send. But at this moment, Shtwenny Clive sent a message that instantly made Jiang Hai's eyes widen. Your buddy at the fishing farm had some conflicts with the fishermen in Boston a few days ago. Is everything alright now? Looking at the message sent by Shtwenny Clive, Jiang Hai's eyelids suddenly jumped. There was a conflict? Why didn't I know? When he saw this line of words, Jiang Hai was no longer in the mood to send these things. Instead, he immediately called Edward Anderson. Jiang Hai's manor was jointly managed by him and Robinson Garcia. Robinson Garcia was in charge of the ranch, while Edward Anderson was in charge of the fishing farm. Now that such a thing happened, why didn't he tell me? Beep beep. The phone rang a few times before it was picked up, and then Edward Anderson's voice came from the other side. Hey boss, did you have fun in Wuxia? Listening to the rough voice on the other side of the phone, as well as some familiar laughter around him, Jiang Hai temporarily calmed down. It seems that the matter shouldn't be very serious, otherwise they wouldn't have the leisure to do this. I heard that you had a conflict with the people in Boston. What's going on? At the moment, Jiang Hai was not in the mood to chat with Edward Anderson. Although he knew that these people might be fine, Jiang Hai still asked him. Hey, it's not a big deal. When Minluan and Andrew were patrolling, they found fish thieves. After we fired a warning shot, they actually dared to fight back. We sailed a boat over to chase their boat away. In the end, when these people were hiding, one of them fell into the sea and was bitten by the shark you raised. Hearing Jiang Hai's question, Edward Anderson began to talk. In fact, it was easy to understand. There were fish in Jiang Hai's fishing farm, and the fishermen nearby knew this. If there were only him and Edward Anderson in Jiang Hai's fishing ground, it's possible that these fishermen would have some ideas. After all, those fishermen were all greenbacks. No one would go against money. As for the violation of private property, as long as they weren't caught, it wasn't considered a violation. Even if they were caught, they could just say that they were fishing on the high seas and went the wrong way. No one could do anything about it. Edward and the others had done the same thing before. But now it was different. Jiang Hai's fishing farm not only had him and Edward, but also recruited Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, and Marin Rupert. Now they had enough manpower on their side. Although the helicopter was not in place yet, the normal daily patrol was indispensable. Generally speaking, when someone came to steal fish, they would leave on their own when they saw these people. After all, if there was a conflict, they would be in trouble. But this time, those who stole fish were not ordinary fishermen. Chapter 182. Where there are people, there will be underworld. Where there are underworld, there will be fights. There will always be some people who are unwilling to live by the rules. They are more willing to plunder other people's resources to support themselves. The people with the most power will become a country, and the people with the least power will be called the Black Zone. The United States, as a capitalist country, is the most powerful country in the world. Naturally, there are many black zones, and Boston is one of them. Jiang Hai came at a good time. In recent years, the United States has been changing its image in the world. Therefore, the black zones and racial discrimination are very strict. But no matter how strict the crackdown is, there will still be some lawbreakers who don't take these laws seriously. Most people in the Boston area are descendants of Irish. Everyone knows that the Irish are actually a very complicated people. Because Northern Ireland was occupied by the British, most of the Northern Irish people don't think of themselves as British. Although their household registration is in the United Kingdom, their hearts are more towards Ireland. Such racial sentiments can't be vented in Europe, but in the United States, the racial discrimination they bring is quite serious. It even formed almost half of Boston's black zone. In Boston, the Northern District has always been the place where the rich live. The air there is fresh, the sun there is bright, and the police there are paid a high salary. They patrol the streets every day. Even if the roads in the main city of Boston are narrow and small, they are still happy to do it. But compared to the Northern District, the Southern District is hell. Dirty and chaotic is the standard of the Southern District. Chaos is the code name of the Southern District, just like the Bronx in New York. It's not that there are no good people here, but there are too many bad people. Here, robbing, stealing, murdering, raping, and even organizing organizations to sell and sell things like that were happening all the time. In fact, when Jiang Hai rescued those girls last time, he had already entered the territory of the Southern District. It was just the border area. If it was some deeper area, even the police will think twice. However, in the past few years, under the crackdown of the American government, these underworld organizations had been restrained a lot. Many of their leaders had disappeared from the world after being targeted by the FBI. However, this was how the world worked. When one person fell, another would stand up to replace him. It was the same in the Southern District. This time, the people who came to Jiang Hai's manor to steal fish were some gangsters from the Southern District. The matter was actually very simple. A group of people stole fish and even took the initiative to open fire. In the end, they fell into the water and were bitten by a shark. They could only blame themselves for being unlucky. However, it was impossible to reason with these hoodlums and talk about the law. They thought that they had lost face here, so they had to get it back here. Therefore, after those people were taken away by the Winthrop police, there were always some strangers driving around Jiang Hai's manor in recent days. According to Robbins and AI Dehua, these people might be from the gang who wanted to find trouble with Jiang Hai. However, these cowboys and fishermen in Jiang Hai's manor were not to be trifled with, especially with Bell. Don't forget that he was from the Triangular State. To deal with these unorthodox people, his long gun was enough to make them suffer. It was precisely because of this that Robbins and AI Dehua were not very worried. Be careful these days. I will go back early. I will be worried if I stay here all the time. Hearing AI Dehua's words, Jiang Hai hesitated and sighed. Things really came as soon as he left. These guys really knew how to find trouble. Originally he was going to go back after the 15th, but now it seemed that he had to go ahead of time. However, as Robbins and AI Dehua said, with Bell and the others, Jiang Hai did not have to worry too much. At least, it was not a problem to stay in Wuxia for a few more days. Perhaps he felt that Jiang Hai's mood was not very good, so AI Dehua specifically reported the situation in the manor. At present, the bait in the manor was almost complete. During the days when Jiang Hai was gone, the weather was gradually getting warmer. This was the good thing about Boston. During the coldest time, the highest temperature during the day was above zero. In recent days, with the southeast monsoon blowing, the manor ski field had melted a little. Robbins and the others were now working hard to clear the snow. As for the cleared snow, they just pushed it directly into the sea. The cleared grassland could allow the 20,000 cows that had been held in for 2 months to come out and take a breather. As for the vegetable garden, it had already been cleaned up. At present, Mrs. Philemon was leading a group of young ladies in the manor to carry out the spring sowing. Although the people in the United States didn't eat much vegetables, they had already planted some vegetables such as cucumbers, pumpkins, cabbages, chili peppers, and eggplants. With more people coming this year, and with the automatic mechanization of the sowing process, Jiang Hai's vegetable garden had expanded to 2 acres, which was 12 acres. Even if the population doubled this time, the vegetables produced this time would be enough to supply them for a year. Hearing these 2 pieces of good news, Jiang Hai's mood finally improved. After hanging up the phone, he leaned against the headboard and thought about his manor. Compared to the manor, Jiang Hai temporarily put the news about Sheikh Clive to the back of his mind. While watching the Spring Festival gala that was no longer interesting, Jiang Hai's thoughts had drifted back to his manor. A few days ago when he had something to do, he did not feel anything. Now that he was suddenly free, Jiang Hai really missed the people in his manor. Robbins, AI Dehua, Philemon. Delina Marion. Unknowingly, so many people had gathered around him. These people had to rely on him to live. This feeling of being relied on was something that Jiang Hai had never experienced before. Because to be exact, since he was young, he had always relied on others to live. Now that he was suddenly relied on by others, the feeling of being needed by others really made him feel a little warm. Especially when he thought of his pets, Xiaobai, Goldie, Bucktooth, Chirp, Little Xia and Big Dumb, he could not help but smile. He recalled how Xiaobai always surrounded him and waved its eyebrows mischievously, how Goldie looked cold and arrogant as it observed the surroundings, how Bucktooth was like a knight, often somersaulting on top of Xiaobai's head, how Chirp could not fly yet, it only knew how to run all over the place, how Little Xia had a special liking for carrots. Every time he fed it, it would lick his hand. There was also the fierce-looking Big Dumb. But this time Big Dumb helped him vent his anger. I'll reward him with a drop of blood when I go back. Thinking of Big Dumb, Jiang Hai could not help but chuckle softly. He was really looking forward to it. If he gave this guy another drop of blood, would this guy turn into a great white shark? However, when he thought of blood, Jiang Hai could not help but think of the tattoo on his body. Since leaving the manor, the number of scales on his tattoo had become fewer and fewer. When he was in New York, there was only one scale. When he returned home, there was only an increase of half a scale every day. It seemed that the environmental factors between the two really played a big role. However, when he glanced at the scales that had already grown to the snake's buttocks, which were the scales on the snake's tail, he realized that there were about 100 more scales before he could reach the full scale. By the time he returned, it would be almost done by March. After looking forward to it for so long, his gold finger was finally going to be upgraded. Bang bang bang. Bang 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 bang. Just as Jiang Hai was still lost in thought, there was a sudden loud noise that shook even the glass from a distance. It also woke Jiang Hai up from his contemplation. When he looked up, he found that it was almost 12 o'clock. The sound of firecrackers reverberated around him, making him no longer in the mood to meditate. Neutralizing all the bad news with good news, my mood is a lot better. With a long sigh, Jiang Hai laughed at himself. As the 12 o'clock countdown ended on the TV, Jiang Hai's cell phone also rang. New Year's greetings text messages entered Jiang Hai's cell phone. He casually looked at the messages on his cell phone. Most of them were from his friends and there were some exceptions, but there were only two. One was from Feng Yunshin, who stayed here last night, and the other was from Moses Adams. It seemed that this Moses Adams was indeed a wonderful person. He even knew the rules of Wuxia. He deliberately sent a New Year's greeting text message in Chinese, which made Jiang Hai's heart warm. Of course, Jiang Hai would not know that this text message was actually sent by Penelope Dahl on behalf of Moses Adams. Since they parted at the police station that day, Jiang Hai really had not seen this woman again. Recalling the bits and pieces of his year, Jiang Hai no longer felt sad. This was not his style. Turning on the lights in the square hall, Jiang Hai then turned off the phone. With the sound of firecrackers outside, Jiang Hai also officially fell asleep. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to his childhood. At that time, his parents were there. Every New Year, his mother would make dumplings in the kitchen, and he and his father would go downstairs to set off firecrackers. Fireworks, colorful patterns, and the sound of explosions constantly echoed in his ears and dreams. Unknowingly, when a new round of sunrise reappeared on the horizon, the new year had officially arrived. Before he woke up, the phone rang in his ear. Jiang Hai felt for the phone in a daze. He looked up and saw that it was Fu Yuan. Only he would get up so early. What's the matter? Jiang Hai was sleeping well and was suddenly awakened. It was good enough that he did not scold him. His tone was naturally unkind. But Fu Yuan did not care at all. Stop sleeping. We are downstairs at your house. Let's go to my house to play. Chapter 183. In Wuxia, there were many things to pay attention to during the new year. The 30th was naturally a day for family reunions. After the 30th, it would be the first day of the new year. From the first day of the new year, it was also the day to visit each family. Other than married daughters who couldn't return to their parents' home, each family was paying New Year's greetings. In addition to paying New Year's greetings, there were many other things to pay attention to. For example, porridge wasn't allowed on the first day of the new year because only poor people used to drink porridge. Therefore, eating porridge on the first day of the new year meant that they would be poor this year. They couldn't eat meat, not even eggs or milk. This was because the morning of the first day of the new year was also called the Pantheon meeting. It meant that all the gods would come out to pay New Year's greetings. Therefore, in order to show respect to these gods, they couldn't eat meat. They had to be vegetarian. At the same time they couldn't take medicine, even supplements and the like. They couldn't call people's names to wake them up. This would make the person who was called be urged to work all year round. They couldn't pay New Year's greetings to people who were still sleeping because this would make them sick. Washing clothes on the first and second day of the new year was forbidden because the water god's birthday was in these 2 days. They couldn't take a nap during the day, nor could they dump the sewage, garbage, or sweep the floor. This would sweep away the wealth of the family. They couldn't let others take money from their pockets, and they couldn't collect debts from others. Of course, these were all old sayings. Now that Jiang Hai's family didn't have any elders who would care about these things. Logically speaking, besides paying New Year's greetings to the elders on the first day of the new year, they couldn't go to other people's houses to play. Jiang Hai didn't miss this. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai responded. Then he sat up from the bed in a daze. He first went to the bathroom to wash his hair, face and teeth. After everything was tidied up, he put on his clothes and went downstairs. When he went downstairs, Jiang Hai saw Su Wei's car from afar. At this time there were already many people sitting in the car. Jiang Hai casually looked around and found that there were still empty seats in the car. He sat down. What kind of person is he? He came out to play with us and even wore a Versace. It must be fake. As soon as Jiang Hai sat down, Fu Yuan started to shout. Originally these people didn't notice, but when they heard Fu Yuan's words they all looked over. But even if they did, they probably wouldn't understand what Versace was. In fact, even Jiang Hai didn't know much about it. Don't mention it. My wife bought it for me. Only then did Jiang Hai notice his clothes. He couldn't help mocking himself. Oh my God, which wife? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Su Wei on the other side also cried out. Jiang Hai patted Su Wei, who was in the driver's seat, and said with a smile, "Who else could it be? Well, don't make trouble for me. We are not divorced yet. Come on, let's go and buy something." What's there to buy? It's the first day of the new year. Which place is open? People aren't on the day. Xiang Hua also said from behind at this time. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Wuxia is like this. It's not easy to buy things after the new year. I don't care what to eat. I just want a drink. Let's just get some peanuts. At this time, another friend of Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei, who had been playing with his mobile phone in the back, also interrupted. Who wants to drink with you? You are a person who works in the hospital. In addition to eating and drinking every day, who can drink more than you? My family is ready. My dad brought 2 sheep back a few days ago. One is to be boiled and the other is to be roasted. Let's eat boiled at noon and roast at night. After lunch, let's see if we are going to have some trouble or play poker. Fu Yuan heard Huang Yunfei's words and gave him the middle finger. Then he said to Su Wei. The group of people chatted and laughed as they drove quickly to Fu Yuan's house. Fu Yuan's house was not small, but it was not very big either. It was a standard 2-room apartment. Usually Jiang Hai and the rest did not go there to play. After all, he was not the only one living here. His parents were also there. But because his hometown was not in Bing City, his parents would go back to their hometown to celebrate the new year. He was the only one at home. Naturally, he could do whatever he wanted. On the way there was a small supermarket that was still open. They bought 5 boxes of beer, some Granny brand peanuts, and a few cans of Russian pickled cucumbers. After that, they drove to Fu Yuan's house. After parking the car, everyone carried a box of wine. Jiang Hai also brought back peanuts and pickled cucumbers. They went to Fu Yuan's house. When they went to call Jiang Hai, it was only about 8 o'clock in the morning, but when they arrived it was already 10 o'clock. After tidying up, everyone was ready for lunch. Under Fu Yuan's instructions, they set up the table and placed the beer outside on the windowsill. At this time, if the people in Bing City wanted to drink cold drinks, they did not need to put it in the fridge. The fridge was not as cold as the fridge outside. In less than 10 minutes, the fridge was already very cold. After setting up the table, they poured the peanuts, spiced beef and a plate of cucumbers. The induction cooker in the middle was already on, and a pot of clear soup was boiling in a big pot. Speaking of hot pot, there were actually 2 kinds of hot pot. One was the hot pot that belonged to the land of Sichuan. The hot pot originated from the Fog City. According to legend, it was because the dock workers in the Fog City couldn't afford delicious food because they were poor. In some slaughterhouses upstream, people who slaughtered pigs and cows didn't eat offal after slaughtering pigs, sheep and cows. These offal would be thrown into the river and floated away with the current. The workers downstream would pick up the offal and use chili or Sichuan pepper to remove the fishy smell. After that, they would cook the offal and eat it. This was the origin of hot pot. The other way to eat it was shabu. This had a much longer history. It was said that during the Song dynasty, the people of the Yuan dynasty were fighting everywhere. One time, when they were preparing to cook, the enemy suddenly attacked. At that time, the chef had an idea. He used the helmets of the soldiers as a pot and cooked a pot of mutton. After the soldiers finished eating, their morale was boosted, and they felt that it was delicious. After that, this dish was passed down, and this was the origin of shabu. At first glance, there was not much difference between these two methods of cooking. But if one looked closely, one would know that these were two different ways of eating. Hot pot was spicy and spicy. It emphasized on the heavy taste, heavy ingredients, and heavy oil. When eating, it was dipped in oil and not sauce. Also, the main ingredients for the hot pot were the internal organs and beef. Almost no one would eat the internal organs of the mutton. On the other hand, shabu used fresh soup as the base. It was divided into seafood pot, bone soup pot, and so on. It emphasized the original taste of the soup. When eating, it was dipped in a sauce plate made of sesame paste and other spices. The main ingredient was meat, mutton, and of course beef. Bing City was located in Longjiang province, and next to it was Inner Mongolia. Therefore, they had the habit of eating shabu instead of hot pot. For example, the soup base that Jiang Hai made today was not the hot pot base bought from the supermarket. It was made by himself. He added scallion, ginger, wine, a few shrimps, a few small crabs, and a few shells. These seafood were used to make the seafood soup base. When the soup was boiled, the taste would come out. It was light and fragrant, but it had the smell of seafood. Fish and mutton were fresh together, so if the mutton was cooked with this soup base, the taste would make people go crazy. Not long after, a fresh aroma began to reverberate in the room, and everyone couldn't help but feel a little hungry. Where's the meat? Glancing at Fu Yuan, who was also swallowing his saliva, Jiang Hai couldn't help but ask him. Oh, let's go get it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan remembered that the meat hadn't been taken out yet. He immediately took Jiang Hai to his freezer. Opening the freezer, there was a pile of steaks on one side. These were the steaks that Jiang Hai sent over. There were also two huge plastic bags, one black and one white. Jiang Hai then opened the black one and found that there was a whole mutton inside. This made Jiang Hai a little speechless. How could he eat it? Not this. This is a black mutton. It's for roasting at night. That's for today's shabu. Seeing Jiang Hai's expression, Fu Yuan knew that he took the wrong one. After putting down the mutton in his hand, he picked up the other bag. The other bag was full of mutton slices, but compared to the mutton slices sold in the market, the mutton slices here were a little different in size. What's the difference? Glancing at the mutton taken out, Jiang Hai asked with some puzzlement. Of course there's a difference. This is a black mutton. The black mutton's meat is firm, it grows slowly, and it's aggressive. Because of its aggressive nature, it's more often raised in the mountains. There's a lot of exercise, so the meat is particularly good. Of course it's still a lot worse than your beef, but this mutton is also the best I've ever eaten. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan began to talk about it. In fact, he just checked it after his father got the mutton back. This shabu is Yujimkin mutton. It's produced in Inner Mongolia. Do you know the capital, Donglai Shun? This mutton is specially for Donglai Shun, and a plate of it costs 68 yuan. It's much more expensive than the average boar goat. We've tasted it once at home, and it's indeed much better than the mutton you can buy outside. The fat isn't greasy and the lean meat isn't too dry. Once it's boiled in water, the freshness of the mutton and the taste of the seafood are mixed together. Oh my God, I can't take it anymore. I'm about to drool. I'm almost drooling. Licking his lips, Fu Yuan took out 3 bags of mutton from the big bag and hurried to the living room. As for Jiang Hai, he also swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Westerners love to eat mutton. This could be seen from the fact that many of their main dishes were mutton chops. The little brothers of the United States, Canada, and Australia all love to eat mutton, especially Australia. The mutton and wool industry could be regarded as the top in the world, but the people of the United States didn't like to eat mutton very much. Jiang Hai also raised some mutton in his manor, but he hadn't eaten mutton for so long. Now that he thought about it, he really missed the taste of pork and mutton. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, he was a little hungry. Chapter 184. Come on, let's start. As the mutton was placed into the soup pot, the original bright red color of the mutton gradually receded and was replaced by a grayish-white color. The room was filled with a fragrant aroma, which stimulated the saliva secreting from Jiang Hai and the others' mouths. Finally, when the soup pot began to boil again, Jiang Hai gave the order. Everyone's chopsticks were the first to attack the mutton in the pot. Jiang Hai picked up the first mouthful of mutton and ate it directly without dipping it in the sauce. When the mutton was put into his mouth, A special fragrance also constantly reverberated in his mouth. The mutton had a faint rank smell and absorbed the base of the seafood in the soup. The meat was firm but not difficult to bite. With a gentle bite, the meat could be completely broken. That kind of chewy feeling constantly impacted in the mouth. This is a completely different concept from beef. This is the taste that Jiang Hai is familiar with. Frowning slightly, Jiang Hai suddenly felt a little emotional. If he can't eat this kind of mutton in the United States, what should he do? Suddenly he wants to import some mutton from China. This mutton tastes really good. Where do you think you bought this mutton from? I'll get some back to the United States to raise. While constantly picking the meat in the pot, Jiang Hai asked Fu Yuan. Don't even think about it. This mutton is a national protected breed. It's farmed in that area. When my dad went to buy it, the people there had to kill the mutton before selling it to my dad. You still want to buy a live one? Anyway, I have no way. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan shook his head and said to Jiang Hai while eating. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little helpless. You say that they call themselves the global village every day, but in the end they can't even trade with each other. Humans are really hypocritical. But he didn't think much about it at the moment and started eating directly. Everyone was satisfied with their lunch. They ate 7 caddies of mutton and 5 bottles of beer each. After that, lunch came to an end. Fu Yuan and the others cleared the table and started playing mahjong. As for Jiang Hai, he was lying on the sofa in Fu Yuan's house. He used his phone to check how to get the ingredients he wanted to buy to America. However, he wouldn't have known if he didn't investigate. Now that he did, he was really shocked. Thinking back to all these years, he had always heard through some channels that certain countries had banned certain things from Wuxia. Big things like weapons and ammunition, small things like fish species and cattle species, everything was banned. But in fact, Wuxia's embargo on foreign products was even stricter. For example, the famous rice seeds could not be brought out. He could buy rice because the current rice did not have the ability to be planted. However, the seeds were not enough, even if they could only be planted for one season. There were also live animals such as meat donkeys. No matter what kind of meat donkey it was forbidden to be shipped abroad. Cattle were also banned. The United States did not sell Wuxia Angus cattle, Japan did not sell Wuxia Wagyu cattle, but Wuxia also did not sell Lucy cattle. In addition to these things, there were also some protected black goats. These were not allowed to be taken out. As for pigs, there were also some pigs that were not allowed to be taken out. For example, Britain's Bacchus pigs, Iberia pigs, and China's Tibetan pigs. It wasn't easy to bring these pigs out of the country. Casually flipping through the list, Jiang Hai's mouth couldn't help but curl up. It seems that his idea was going to die early. Come, have some tea. While Jiang Hai was sighing, Fu Yuan also came over with a cup of tea. After drinking some wine, although drinking strong tea is not good, drinking some green tea is still very comfortable, at least that's what they think. After putting the tea on the coffee table beside Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan left. Jiang Hai looked at the teacup in front of him and sat up. To be honest, Jiang Hai did not like to drink tea. It was because his father liked to drink tea when he was young, so he also drank it. As a child, tea was neither sweet nor fragrant. It also did not have the taste of milk. The bitter taste was indeed not good. Most importantly, when you drink tea, you will drink tea dregs. That was why he did not like to drink tea and did not pay attention to these things. But today, when he saw the tea made by Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. In the transparent glass there were whole tea sprouts moving up and down. It was indeed different from the tea leaves he had seen before. It looked like a TV show. Although he did not know the taste of this tea, at least from the surface, it was not bad. He hesitated for a moment. After all, he had drunk wine and his mouth was very dry. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. The moment the tea entered his mouth, there was a slight bitterness. However, after the bitterness there was a sweet feeling. Jiang Hai might not have been able to feel it when he was young, but now he could fully feel it. The natural fragrance flowed continuously between his lips and teeth. He could even feel the scales on his body increasing at a faster rate. This tea has such an effect. As the tea entered his throat, Jiang Hai also let out a long breath. Although it was just a simple cup of tea, Jiang Hai felt that his mind suddenly became clearer. Most importantly, it seemed that this tea really had the effect of stimulating the growth of his scales. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai also put down the cup. Fu Yuan, where did you get this tea? Jiang Hai asked Fu Yuan, who was still playing mahjong over there. This tea was given to my dad as a gift. I heard that it costs more than 2,000 yuan per caddy. It seems to be something like Maojian. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan said to Jiang Hai while playing mahjong. Maojian? Malfon. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, then he looked it up on the internet and couldn't help but chuckle. But it was the same. Whether it was Jiang Hai or Fu Yuan, they actually didn't know much about tea. Now Jiang Hai also suddenly felt that this tea seemed to be quite delicious, and it seemed that the tea leaves had a stimulating effect on the scales on his body, so he became interested. At the same time, he decided to buy some tea leaves back. He didn't care about a few thousand yuan per caddy. What he cared about was that this thing had to have an effect. At the moment he was no longer polite. While drinking tea he played with his phone and thought about what he would bring back when he went back. Although in the United States, you can buy what you want to eat if you have money, but there are always some things that taste the same in different places of origin. For example, pigs, sheep, tea leaves, sauces. Originally he wanted to go back as soon as possible yesterday, but he didn't expect that after wandering around today, he found that there were a lot of things he wanted to buy. Unknowingly it was also nighttime. They ate hot pot for lunch and roasted lamb for dinner. The lamb was sliced off from the black goat. Su Wei was the main knife. After slicing the lamb he marinated it with cooking wine, ginger, fennel, sesame seeds, pepper, starch, monosodium glutamate, sesame seeds, pepper, starch, monosodium glutamate, sesame seeds, pepper, starch, monosodium glutamate, and if one wanted to eat spicy food, he added a little chili powder. The lamb marinated in this way didn't have an unacceptable rank odor, nor was it too pungent. While retaining the original freshness and sweetness of the lamb, it also added other flavors. Then it was roasted on a grill. Jiang Hai really didn't know how to describe the taste. In Jiang Hai's impression, this was how lamb should taste. In terms of taste, the lamb might be a lot worse than Jiang Hai's special grade A snowflake frost beef. However, this kind of cooking method was not available in the United States. Although Mrs. Philemon was receiving Jiang Hai's money, she really wouldn't spend so much time roasting these things. Even some Western cooks were only more proficient in the use of heat. It was delicious, but to Jiang Hai, delicious food couldn't compare to what he loved to eat. After another meal, the few of them drank the rest of the wine. They drank until nearly 12 o'clock in the evening. Everyone fell asleep in a daze. Because they were all men, they didn't need to be so particular. Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua went to sleep in his room. Su Wei and Huang Yuanfei slept on the sofa. Jiang Hai pulled a quilt and directly made a bed on the floor in the living room. The building in Fu Yuan's house was just built in the past few years, so it was also geothermal. There was no need to worry about the cold at night. The next morning when Jiang Hai woke up, his buddies still showed no signs of waking up. Since he had woken up, he couldn't let them sleep any longer. Jiang Hai went to the balcony and opened the window. The winter wind mixed with the snowflakes blew their tears down. In an instant, the two sleeping on the sofa woke up. Since they couldn't sleep, no one else could. They quietly opened Fu Yuan's door. This time, no one slept. They went to the bathroom in a daze one after another to solve their personal hygiene problem. The group of 5 cooked 3 caddies of dumplings in Fu Yuan's house. Generally speaking, during the New Year in the Northeast, a family might not have much other things, but they definitely had dumplings. Once the 3 caddies of sour flour meat dumplings entered their stomachs, everyone woke up. After helping Fu Yuan pack up, everyone left in Su Wei's car. It was already afternoon when Jiang Hai returned home. After casually eating at home, Jiang Hai didn't idle around in the afternoon. Instead, he went to the nearby supermarket. For a service organization like this, under normal circumstances, it would be open for a while during the day. However, it used to be closed at 8 or 10 in the evening. Now it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon. This time Jiang Hai wanted to buy a lot of things. He needed to prepare in advance. After taking a taxi, he went to a large supermarket near his house. He first went there to buy some sauces and pickles. These things were allowed to be brought. There were also some domestic sauces sold abroad such as Laogan Ma, but the price was ridiculously expensive. It was 6 or 7 yuan in China, but it was more than $10 abroad. The price difference was dozens of times. In addition to Laogan Ma, there was also xiangqi sauce and garlic sauce. Jiang Hai was a little tired of spaghetti sauces. These sauces were more reliable. Chapter 185. Hey, can't you stay for a few more days? I've already bought the plane ticket. Let's go together on the 10th. Sitting in Fu Yuan's car, Jiang Hai looked at the scenery of Bingqing outside, and Fu Yuan kept talking in his ear. Do you think I want to go back so soon? If it weren't for the incident at the manor, I wouldn't be in a hurry to go back. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai said softly, but whether this is the case or not, probably only he himself knows. Today was the 5th day of the new year. To be exact, after the 5th day the new year was over for ordinary people, and Jiang Hai also chose to leave Bingqing and return to Boston today. Compared to Jiang Hai, who could leave whenever he wanted, Fu Yuan was not as well off. He had to stay at home with his father. His mother could only leave after the 10th day of the new year. Moreover, he could only go to Jiang Hai's place to play for a few days, because they were only on the 15th day of the new year. There was still a week of annual leave which added up to 12 days. Even if they took 4 days to travel between the two places, they only had 8 days to play. Originally, he thought that when Jiang Hai came back this time he could go with him, but he did not expect that Jiang Hai would leave on the 5th day of the new year. It was not very appropriate to say that Jiang Hai left. The reason why he was in such a hurry to go back was that the incident at his manor seemed to be a bit out of control. Because he received a call from Rabinsi the day before yesterday, saying that someone had sneaked into his manor, but after being bitten by little Huang, he forced himself to escape. The police were involved in this case, and Jiang Hai also called Moses Adams and asked him to take care of things from time to time. But even so, the security of Jiang Hai's manor did not need to be too worried. After all, after this incident, Rabinsi and Ai Dehua were more cautious about the issue of protection. The police also came to patrol every few minutes. After all, even if Jiang Hai had the subsidy from Winthrop, he was definitely the biggest taxpayer in Winthrop town. If they did not protect him, who else could they protect? In addition, there was also Xiao Bai and little Huang. If these guys wanted to break in, they had to see if they were strong enough. The reason why he was in a hurry now was mainly because of two groups of people. The first group was his classmates. This was mainly Xiang Hua's fault. After Jiang Hai gave them the beef that day, Xiang Hua went out with a few other classmates on the 2nd day of the new year. He drank too much and told them that Jiang Hai gave them the beef. When they heard that a jin of beef was worth 2,000 yuan and Jiang Hai gave them 10 jin without blinking, these classmates were tempted. These days he did not know where they got Jiang Hai's phone number from. They asked him out and asked if he was at home. Jiang Hai did not know what to do. If these classmates could still be rejected, then his relatives that he had almost forgotten were another wave of trouble. Among his classmates there was a mother who was his second aunt's colleague. They usually had a good relationship. When she called, she told them. This time, all of Jiang Hai's relatives knew that Jiang Hai was successful, rich and successful in the United States, so these relatives came to his door. In the face of classmates he could still reject, but in the face of relatives, although Jiang Hai disdained them, it was really not good for him to say harsh words. When Jiang Hai's mother passed away, these relatives did not even come to the funeral, let alone to take care of her. Even if they did come, they would just throw a few hundred yuan in a hurry. Then, they would say that they had something to do or that they were still at work and leave directly. Speaking of this, he had to thank Qi Li's mother. She was the one who called a motorcade and helped to call over a dozen people so that the old man could leave without being too shabby. It was really like the tea cools down when the person leaves. In the face of such relatives, Jiang Hai would be strange if he cared about them. Except for buying some gifts for his uncle who used to be good to his family, he did not care about anyone else. However, his cold treatment could not make these people quiet down. So in the end, Jiang Hai had to hide in advance. In fact, he could also go out to play, but after thinking about it, it was better to go directly to the manor than to other places. Speaking of which, after being out for these days, he really missed the people and scenery in the manor. Hey, I'm just saying. You said that it was the first time I took such a long plane, and no one talked to me or anything. How boring. In fact, taking a plane was a very boring thing. Taking a train you could see the scenery, but taking a plane, besides looking at the clouds, what else could you see? Fu Yuan also had the capital and appearance to flirt with the stewardess. If he asked for a drink, she might not even care about him. Well, don't mutter. Isn't it just 5 days? I'll pick you up in New York. Looking at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai smiled. When he was eating on the 1st day of the new year, he also asked his friends if they wanted to go to Boston. Unfortunately, although these people were a little tempted, they were a little reluctant to pay for the plane tickets. Flying from Wuxia to the United States, even if there was a discount, a round trip would cost at least 10,000 yuan. Why couldn't this 10,000 yuan be used? Their financial conditions didn't allow for it either. Jiang Hai did not lack the money, but he knew that if he took all the money, these people might not agree. Everything must follow the rules. They were friends and there was no problem of who would take advantage of who. They were not flattering each other, and they were not in a superior and subordinate relationship. They were equals. It would be different if they needed help, but now they could not open their mouths. Jiang Hai also knew that they had to maintain their self-esteem, so after mentioning it, he didn't say much. In the end, only Fu Yuan took a plane to Boston on the 10th day of the new year to look for him. While the two were chatting, they had arrived at Bing City Airport. He had just returned for 6 days and he did not expect to leave so soon. When he came, he only carried a bag, and when he left, he also carried a bag. Because Jiang Hai had bought too many things, he sent them back to Boston first. This time, Jiang Hai bought a lot of things based on the principle of staying in Boston. 100 packets of garlic chili sauce, 10 boxes of Lao Gan Ma spicy beef sauce, 100 packets of Xiangqi sauce. These were specially used for cucumbers and lettuce. Other than these, there were also lots of sauces and pickles. Jiang Hai liked to eat oregano, xiao wei, a type of radish pickled vegetable, authentic Korean spicy cabbage, etc. Other than these things, there were also many Bing City specialties. For example, dried sausages. Jiang Hai had bought 50 jin of dried sausages, and all the sausages were lean meat. Although the dried sausages were a bit dry, it was fine as long as Jiang Hai liked to eat them. Other than these, there was also Bing City's barbecued pork. It was air-dried and tasted good. It was also 50 jin. There were also barbecued sausages, which were the so-called extended children's sausages. It was a type of Bing City's red sausages. Bing City's red sausages were the best in the world. Regardless of whether Feng Yu liked to eat them or not, at least the reputation of Bing City's red sausages was much better than other places' red sausages. As for the black pigs, black sheep, etc., Feng Yu had asked around these few days. If Feng Yu wanted them alive, he could go to the local government to apply for a farm permit. If the government allowed it, he could sell them to Feng Yu. But if Feng Yu wanted to ship them to Boston, there were no doors or windows. But Jiang Hai did not want to send some mutton and pork back. Although there were not many mutton and pork in the US, they were still available. If they were not alive, the taste would be discounted. This was also one of the biggest headaches for Jiang Hai. But luckily he had bought a lot of vegetables recently. A few days ago, Feng Yu went to a high-class tea house to drink tea. As he was generous, he drank almost all the teas in the tea house. He had also figured out some things about tea. Tea was generally divided into green tea and black tea. The black tea in the UK was the black tea from Wuxia. Maybe it was because they liked the slightly bitter taste. This was just like coffee, and black tea was the coffee of the aristocrats. Of course, the price of good tea was much more expensive than the best coffee. But Jiang Hai did not feel anything about black tea. He felt it was too bitter. But he had started to like green tea. Huaxia's green tea was also divided into many kinds. Longjing, Biluakun, Maofeng, Guanpian, Injin, Maojian, Yancha, and so on were all green tea. After drinking so much tea, Jiang Hai felt the most comfortable with 3 kinds of tea. One of them was the Longjing tea, which was known as the king of green tea. However, Longjing tea was also divided into 3, 6, and 9 grades. The best was the West Lake tea, followed by the Zhujiang tea. The West Lake tea was also divided into 5 categories: lion, dragon, cloud, running, and plum tea. However, the Longjing tea from Cloud and Running was no longer available, because these 2 places had become tourist attractions, especially Running Tiger. The Longjing tea from Running Tiger was the best. Among the Lion, Dragon, and Plum tea, Maijiawa's Longjing tea was ranked lower. However, even if it was ranked lower, the top-grade Longjing tea from before the Ming dynasty could still be sold for 2,000 to 3,000 a jin. Lion Mountain's Longjing was even more expensive. Before the Ming dynasty was sold at 5,000, and it might not even be available. Jiang Hai bought Maijiawa's Longjing. After all, he bought a lot. He bought 10 cans for 500 yuan. In addition to Longjing, he also bought a May bamboo green and golden altar sparrow tongue. The price was almost the same. Jiang Hai bought a lot of things that added up to more than 400 caddies. He spent less than 10,000 yuan. But to buy these tea leaves, Jiang Hai spent more than 10,000 yuan. But these were all obtained by him, so he endured it. But to find an international express delivery to Boston, he spent more than 8,000 yuan. The postage was almost as expensive as the price of the things, which made Jiang Hai's heart ache. But there was no way Boston didn't sell it. The things were left 2 days earlier than Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai left now, the things should arrive when he went back. Now that the tea leaves were in his backpack, he was wondering if he should get a few tea plants for himself. But there was no way, and he didn't know how to do it. He had to go back and ask. He just didn't know if Luo Binci and the others knew how to do it. Thinking about the rough character and style of the American people, Jiang Hai felt a little unsure. Shaking his head and saying goodbye to Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai also boarded the plane to the imperial capital. Chapter 186. Boss This Way. When Jiang Hai came out of New York's JFK airport, he saw Philemon Turner waving to him from a distance. Seeing Philemon Turner here, Jiang Hai also walked out quickly with his backpack. Hey boss, you're back so early? I thought you would stay for another week before coming back. Seeing Jiang Hai, Philemon stepped forward and hugged Jiang Hai, and then his broken mouth disease completely broke out and he quickly said to Jiang Hai, "How dare I not come back? If I didn't come back, you would have turned the sky upside down." He smiled and punched Philemon in the chest. "Hey boss, this time it has nothing to do with me. I can only say that your fish farm is too eye-catching, but I have to admit boss, you raised two good dogs. Why didn't I see it at the beginning? Those two dogs were so powerful that they bit a man. If this guy wasn't so ruthless, he would rather have a piece of meat torn off to escape. He would have been caught alive by us, these damn white-skinned pigs." Sitting in the driver's seat, Philemon kept cursing. "Wow, you dare to call me a white-skinned pig here? Aren't you afraid that Robbins and Ed will come to trouble you?" Hearing Philemon's words, Jiang Hai said with a little surprise. "They can't hear me now. I believe my boss won't complain, right? Ah, okay, my boss, let's go." Looking at Jiang Hai's words, Philemon pretended to wipe his sweat, then stepped on the accelerator and the car sped out. After leaving the airport, they sped all the way to the north. The distance from New York to Boston is actually not too far. It's only 400 or 500 kilometers. Including the place where Jiang Hai lives, it's only 5 or 6 hours of driving. However, it's quite tiring for one person to drive for 5 or 6 hours, but Jiang Hai can also drive. The two decided to drive every 2 hours, so it doesn't matter. On the road, Jiang Hai's F-650 was running very fast, constantly moving forward on New York's highway. On the road they could often see some tour buses. It was the Wuxia New Year, so there were definitely many people who came to the United States to play. After all, for the current Wuxia, although the poor still accounted for the majority, there were more and more rich people. Through the car window, Jiang Hai could clearly see that the bus was filled with people wearing different colored water hats. They were listening to a tour guide who was standing at the front of the bus. Looking at these people, Jiang Hai also felt a bit emotional. Thinking back, these people were his goal. People who could go abroad to play at the end of the year were undoubtedly very enviable. But now, it seems that he had unknowingly surpassed most of these people. At least in terms of wealth, most of these people could not be compared with Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai was a bit surprised. But now, it seemed that he had unknowingly surpassed most of these people. Unknowingly, the car had already driven out of New York and entered Massachusetts. The scenery along the way was actually not very good. If it was spring, summer, or autumn, the scenery along the way would be very good. Although there were no famous mountains or rivers, there were mountains, rivers, and fields which made people feel very comfortable. But now, after all, it was just the beginning of spring, so there was more snow on the ground that had not melted. Some small rivers that could be seen on the side of the road were flowing slowly, but there was still some residual ice on the edge. Some grasslands in the distance were also withered at this time. Only some green light on the branches of some trees by the roadside could be seen, which represented the aura of new life. "Boss, I have to admit that the manor you bought is indeed a treasure land, you know? When we finished clearing the snow, we found that the grass under the snow was still green. They actually grew ahead of time, so we didn't need to re-sow grass seeds. Not only did this save us a lot of money, but it also allowed our cows to eat fresh grass faster." Looking at the bleak scenery outside, Philip said with a proud face. But when Jiang Hai heard this, he was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. Because other people didn't know what was going on with the grass, but Jiang Hai was very clear. If it weren't for his blood, his manor would also be bleak at this time. Fortunately, these people didn't think that the grass was supernatural, which made Jiang Hai feel relieved. In the blink of an eye, Philip drove for more than 2 hours. In order to prevent him from getting too tired, Jiang Hai took the initiative to switch to the driver's seat at the next rest stop. After the two ate some snacks in the rest stop, Jiang Hai continued to drive towards his manor. Although Jiang Hai's physical fitness is very strong, after driving for more than an hour, he couldn't concentrate anymore. His eyes were looking around. At this time he passed by a tour bus. He glanced back and saw that the people inside the bus were eating lunch. Some of them might be northerners. At this time they were eating red sausages. When he saw the red sausages, he suddenly remembered the things he sent. "By the way, have you seen the things I sent?" Looking at Philip, Jiang Hai asked with a smile. "Things? What things?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Philip froze for a moment, then asked with some doubts. "It's a big bag of things. There's a lot of food and some spices in it. Didn't you see them?" Hearing Philip's words, Jiang Hai was also stunned. "His things have been sent for almost 4 days, why haven't they arrived yet?" "No, I didn't see them." Looking at Philip's serious expression, Jiang Hai frowned slightly. He took out his mobile phone and called the express delivery company. As a result, he learned that the things hadn't been delivered yet. These damn guys, why are they so slow? After hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai's brows wrinkled. Multinational express delivery companies, after all, were different from domestic ones. They needed to go through customs to check if this thing could be sent abroad by plane. If it was off-season, it would take about 4 or 5 days for it to be sent abroad. However, they were very busy recently. Some people who were abroad couldn't go home during the holidays. Most of their family members would choose to send them some things. Even if they couldn't go home, they could still experience the taste of their hometown, right? Therefore, this caused the workload of the customs to increase. It was precisely because of this that multinational express delivery companies generally said that the delivery time was 1 week to half a month. Sending it within half a month wasn't considered a dereliction of duty. Now that he heard it, Jiang Hai really didn't know what to say. However, he couldn't possibly return empty-handed after returning to the country. In addition to his own food, there were also some toys that he had brought back for his subordinates. In fact, it wasn't anything expensive. It was more of a thought. Other than some food, there were mainly cigarettes and wine. Don't think that the people in the United States didn't give gifts. In fact, they would give gifts if they wanted to. It was just that if they didn't have a very, very close relationship, the officials wouldn't dare to accept gifts. But usually when they visited each other, they would give gifts. For example, when a family was having a birthday party or just ordinary gatherings, they would give gifts. The thing that the people in the United States gave the most was the red wine rack. Heaven knows, Jiang Hai didn't have that much red wine in his house. Other than the red wine rack, some homemade biscuits, cakes, and so on were also very good gifts. It wasn't how expensive it was, but more of a thought. Compared to giving money in China, it wasn't so direct here. Jiang Hai had also stayed here for half a year. He had a rough understanding of the customs of the United States. So when he came back this time, although he didn't drink baijiu, he still bought some. Whether these people drank it or not, this was his thought, and these people would be very happy to accept it. But now, if he came back first and the gifts didn't arrive, it would indeed be a bit abrupt. There's no other way. Let's buy some gifts first. Seeing that the highway leading straight to Winthrop was in front, Jiang Hai sighed, turned the steering wheel, and ran in the direction of Boston. Seeing Jiang Hai's action, Philemon was also shocked. "Boss, aren't you going home? Why are you going to Boston?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Philemon asked strangely. "The gifts I bought for you are still in Wuxia. It will take at least a week for those things to arrive, so I'm going to get you some gifts first." Jiang Hai didn't hide it from Philemon, but said directly. "Hey, what gifts? It's the same if you give them to us in a few days." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Philemon waved his hand. He really didn't care much about these things. The snow in the manor had almost melted recently. They were very busy every day. "Okay, I have the final say in this matter." Hearing Philemon's words, Jiang Hai waved his hand and interrupted him. He stepped on the accelerator and the car rushed towards the northern part of Boston. Although Jiang Hai didn't know much about Boston, he had come here many times before. However, he had been here many times after all, so he was very clear about the general situation here. He especially remembered one shop. A shop that let him buy a lot of chickens. God knows why he was obsessed with it at the beginning. He didn't know how to cook chickens. What's the use of buying so many chickens? Chicken stewed with mushrooms. It's delicious, but what's the point of saying that if he doesn't know how to cook it? Jiang Hai is still raising those chickens. Although he didn't stew them with mushrooms, at least he solved the problem of eating eggs. As for that shop, he remembered it deeply. After turning a corner, he came to the shop that once cheated him. Although it was in the United States, it was obvious that this family still followed the old customs in China. The door of the small supermarket was pasted with 2 huge Fu characters upside down. According to the old people, this is called "Fu has arrived." In addition to the Fu characters, there was also a couplet in front of the door. There were 2 strings of lanterns hanging on both sides of the couplet. It was very festive. Chapter 187. Welcome. When Jiang Hai entered the supermarket, because it was noon, the people here were eating there. A group of 7 people, including 2 salespeople and 4 people wearing security guard uniforms. In addition to being responsible for the security here, they also need to move goods and replenish the supermarket. In addition to these staff, there were only 2 people who looked like outsiders. A middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s was sitting there in casual clothes, and the old man who tricked Jiang Hai to buy a chicken last time. As soon as she saw Jiang Hai come in, a girl wearing a waiter's uniform who was sitting there eating stood up immediately and said to Jiang Hai, Hearing her words, the other people here also turned their heads. Oh, it's you, little brother? Have you finished the chicken? Seeing that it was Jiang Hai, it was obvious that the old man here still had some impression of Jiang Hai. He couldn't help but smile and say. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but roll his eyes. No, I'm raising it to lay eggs. While responding, Jiang Hai walked into the supermarket. Raising it to lay eggs? You young people just don't know how to cherish it. Only this kind of chicken that has not laid eggs can make delicious chicken stew. The meat is firm just like a woman. It is worthless after giving birth, cough. Little Lu, I'm sorry. As soon as he heard Jiang Hai's words, the old man here said subconsciously, but when he said it, he remembered that there was a girl beside him, so he said it with a smile, but the girl blushed. You think I don't know that chicken stew is delicious? The problem is that I don't know how to make it. Hearing the old man's words, Jiang Hai said afterward. If you don't know how to make it, why did you buy it? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the old man here couldn't help but be stunned and said with some doubts. I was fooled by you. Jiang Hai's eyes looked at the old man in front of him contemptuously, making the old man a little embarrassed. He couldn't help but touch his nose and laugh. Cough, if you don't know how to make it, you can also return it. Although he was embarrassed, he still said with a little confidence. Forget it. I've circled a piece of land for them in my manor. I'll feed them some food and they'll look for insects to eat. They're pretty good when they're alive. I've eaten their eggs and they're very delicious. They're much better than the eggs you buy here. Although Jiang Hai didn't eat those chickens, Jiang Hai liked the eggs they laid very much. After all, the grass at his place was sprinkled with his blood. They were all improved varieties, so the insects eating the grass in the grass were naturally improved varieties. After these chickens ate these insects, the eggs they laid not only had the taste of eggs, but also the smell of grass. They were also very refreshing and tasted very good. If you really can't figure it out, you can give a red wine rack. This is also one of the most tacit things here. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was listening carefully, the old man began to talk non-stop. Jiang Hai also calculated in his heart. Most of the people in Jiang Hai's manor are white. Robbins Garcia, Burke Dollar, Harriman Fells, Bell Lester, Edward Anderson, Tommy Charles, and Marlon Rupert are all white. These people are all white. Philemon Turner and Eleanor Cece are black. Andrew Christian is Latin American. So, the things he prepared are all the same. If it's a white person, it also depends on where his ancestry is. If it's a descendant of England, you can give him black tea. You will definitely like it. If it's a descendant of other countries such as Ireland or France, you can give him coffee and cheese. You will like it very much. If it's a black person, you can give them coffee and oatmeal. Of course, you can give them some handicrafts such as this Wuxia festival, they will also be very happy. If it's a Latin American, I recommend you give them this. Lagamma, they love this thing. But other than this thing, you can decide for the other food. In fact, to be honest, I have been in the United States for more than 10 years, and I really haven't seen too many foreigners who like to eat our Wuxia's authentic Wuxia food. They eat more of the improved food. As the old man spoke, he introduced the things in front of him to Jiang Hai. And his words also made Jiang Hai, who originally wanted to give some sausages, barbecued pork, and so on, stop for a moment. Indeed, he had been in the United States for a period of time. It was impossible to say that he did not want to eat Wuxia food. However, he had also eaten at the Wuxia restaurant here. The taste of the food was quite different. There were many restaurants on the streets here. Sichuan cuisine and Cantonese cuisine were the two main series. Other than that, there were some Shandong cuisine restaurants mixed in with restaurants in the Jiangsu and Zhejiang regions. However, the taste of the food made in these restaurants was really similar to Jiang Hai's. Americans did not like to eat salty things or bones, so basically, all the freshwater fish dishes were not fated with them. Their taste was more sweet and sour, and this sourness was not acetic acid, but the kind of sourness that was found in Cantonese cuisine. The taste was somewhat similar to Cantonese cuisine, but it was also heavier and more sour than Cantonese cuisine. If one were to talk about it, it was somewhat a combination of Cantonese cuisine and Zhejiang cuisine. Even though Jiang Hai's favorite dish was double-cooked pork, to be honest, he was not used to eating Wuxia food in the United States. However, this kind of taste was the favorite of the people in the United States. No matter where you did business, sticking to the authentic taste was not the way to make a fortune, especially in the restaurant industry. The most important thing was to cater to the local taste. Even in Jiang Hai's opinion, this was no longer Chinese food. It only had the shape but not the taste. This was also why Jiang Hai would rather eat steak and fried cod sticks at home every day, although he would get tired of eating them. What about the wine? After looking around, Jiang Hai found that there was still a lot of Wuxia wine in the shop. Although the price was much more expensive than in China, Jiang Hai still asked because he also bought a lot of wine by express delivery. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the old man waved his hand and said with disdain, "They won't like to drink our wine." Speaking of which, the Westerners who like to drink our wine the most are the Russians. They especially like to drink our wine with high alcohol content. I heard your accent, you should be from the Northeast. Then you should know. When Westerners drank, they liked to drink wine that was soft and smooth. Just like the four base wines, it was like this. No matter how strong the alcohol was, it would burn and roll in the stomach, but at least it had to taste good. However, Wuxia wine was more of a sauce smell when it entered the stomach. First, it was warm, and second, it was comfortable. Of course, there were also pure spiciness like burning knives, but drinking that kind of wine was not good for the body. Most Westerners did not like Wuxia wine except for the Russians who were from the Soviet Union. In the past, Jiang Hai had heard that because Black Dragon Province, where Bing City was located, was only a river away from Russia, so there were often Russians coming from the port to Wuxia to drink. Jiang Hai even heard that in the 80s and 90s, a bottle of Northeast aged wine, the kind that cost a few RMB, could be exchanged for 3 purebred Caucasus dogs at the border. At that time, one Caucasus dog was sold for 200 renminbi. 1 or 300 yuan could also be exchanged for gold directly. When gold was 80 yuan per gram, a bottle of wine could be exchanged for 2 or 3 grams. It was really a good deal. Of course, there were also a lot of risks. If someone was a thief or provoked the opposite party and was killed, then their death would be in vain. No one would stand up for them. Chapter 188. Let's go. Carrying several large bags of gifts, Jiang Hai returned to the car and said to Philemon, who was sitting in the driver's seat. Philemon looked back at the large bags that Jiang Hai brought back and looked inside curiously. After discovering that there were many handicrafts inside, his face was filled with a smile. Indeed, compared to food and drinks, they were more interested in these Wuxia handicrafts that represented mysterious symbols. The car engine started, and not long after, it sped all the way to the highway. After another half an hour or so, Jiang Hai had stopped in front of his manor. After entering the command, the manor's gate opened, and Jiang Hai's car quickly drove in. Before the car arrived at the parking lot in front of the villa, there were already several figures waiting for Jiang Hai's arrival in the parking lot. Looking from afar, these several tall and short figures were the closest people to him here. Robbins and Ai Hua, who represented the cowboys and fishermen, smiled at Jiang Hai, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. Standing next to them were Delina and Marian. These 2 little girls who came to Jiang Hai's place in the winter had recovered after a few months of good living. Their weight had risen sharply and their figures had become better. Perhaps it was because they really pitied these 2 girls, and the 2 girls did not have any bad records, so in the manor, a group of women led by Mrs. Philemon were very concerned about these 2 girls. Sometimes, when they went to town to buy vegetables, they would specially bring back some clothes and snacks for the 2 girls. Jiang Hai was not a sissy, so there were very few snacks in his house. At most, there were some dried prunes and dried apricots. However, most children did not like to eat these things. Now, most of the clothes of the 2 girls were bought by Mrs. Philemon. Although Jiang Hai knew about this, he did not refuse their kindness. First, it was because the things were not very expensive. Second, it was because, after all, Delina and Marian were girls, and it was not easy for Jiang Hai to buy some personal clothes. He was still single, and with Mrs. Philemon's help, this was the best result. At this time, the 2 girls were standing in the parking lot. They were wearing a light yellow woolen top and a short skirt that reached their knees. Of course, they were not crazy enough to wear stockings or nothing at all. They also wore very thick leggings. However, because they were too thin, their legs were still abnormally thin. She was also wearing a pair of black flats. Jiang Hai didn't know what Mrs. Philip and the others were thinking. Originally, Jiang Hai couldn't tell the difference between the 2 sisters. Now that they were dressed like this, it was even harder to tell them apart. In addition to these 4 people, Jiang Hai's 4 pets were also gathered here at this time. Xiaobai and Little Yellow were carrying Bucktooth and Chirpy on their backs. However, Bucktooth did not dare to play on Little Yellow's back. He only dared to play on Xiaobai's back. But Qiuqiu didn't know much about this. After these days of growth, this little white-headed sea eagle's body had gradually grown a lot, and the feathers on its body had also gradually become plump. It was no longer like that gray thing at the beginning. Its pair of eyes were slightly more handsome, but it still could not fly. It only knew how to flap its wings at home. Especially during the days when Jiang Hai was not around, it did not stop causing trouble. Now that it saw Jiang Hai coming back, its eyes were full of surprise. When they saw Jiang Hai coming down with the 2 big bags, the 4 little ones immediately rushed over. This was the longest time they had been away from Jiang Hai since they were taken as pets by Jiang Hai. When they left, these guys were still a little heartless, but now that Jiang Hai was back, they went crazy. Even little Yellow, who was usually cold, deliberately ran to Jiang Hai's legs at this time and kept rubbing its head against the corner of Jiang Hai's trousers. Okay. I know you all miss me. Be good, be quiet, be quiet. With so many things in his hands, Jiang Hai couldn't spare them. He could only comfort these crazy little guys with words. Fortunately, when Daliana and Marian saw Jiang Hai's look, they ran over with smiles and took the bags in Jiang Hai's hands. It's so cold, why did you come out wearing so little? Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? After letting the 2 girls take the things in their hands, Jiang Hai freed his hands and touched the 2 girls' hair, pretending to be dignified as he said to the 2 girls. However, his dignified manner was nothing to the 2 girls. They all smiled. Daliana directly carried the bags into the house, while Marian gestured to Jiang Hai with one hand, telling Jiang Hai that their clothes were actually very thick. Moreover, they had just come out of the villa, so they would not catch a cold in such a short time. Looking at her cute appearance, Jiang Hai messed up her hair again, then comforted the little guys. After being intimate with these little guys, Jiang Hai brought them into the house. Of course, Luo Binci and Ai Dehua also came in. In addition to welcoming Jiang Hai, they also had to report the situation of these days face to face. As for the driver, Philip, after parking the car, he also followed them into the house. After entering the house, the enthusiasm of these little guys finally subsided a little, and the 2 girls took them to the 2nd floor to play. As for Jiang Hai, he deliberately took out the tea leaves he bought from his backpack, made some Westlake Longjing tea, brewed a pot of tea and put it on the table. Of course, everyone had a share. Boss, what is this? Looking at the undulating leaves in the cup and smelling the strong bean fragrance, Philip asked with some doubts. This is the tea leaves of Wuxia, the first of the top 10 green tea, Westlake Longjing tea. You can try it. If you don't like it, I will go and make coffee for you. Hearing Philip's words, Jiang Hai motioned them to try it first. Tea leaves, I haven't drunk it for a long time. This thing is not so easy to buy in the United States, and the ones in those Wuxia stores are not ordinary expensive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the others did not move, but Luo Binci picked up the cup with interest. Although it was only the worst glass cup, he was still very happy. He drank tea leaves a long time ago, more than 10 years ago when he worked in Texas. At first, he didn't like this kind of light taste very much, but after drinking it for a few days, he found that this kind of light taste was really good and comfortable. If he didn't drink it for a long time, he would miss it because the food in the United States is too sour and too oily. It's good to drink green tea occasionally to clear the stomach, but after he left the ranch, it was difficult to drink tea again. The mainstream drink in the United States is still coffee. If you buy it at home, you can buy it with ground coffee or coffee beans, which are much cheaper than tea leaves. After all, the United States does not grow coffee, so in some tea-producing areas in the South, tea leaves are sold for 100 yuan per caddy. When they are shipped to the United States, they dare to sell it for 200 yuan per caddy. This is not a small burden for a cowboy with an average income. If you drink a caddy of tea leaves every day, you can drink it for about half a year, but if you buy coffee with 200 yuan per caddy, you can drink it for 3 years. This is a 6 times difference, plus the tea leaves that cost 100 yuan per caddy. How can this be considered good tea leaves? In China, good tea leaves that cost thousands of yuan or even tens of thousands of yuan per caddy are absolutely priceless in the United States. Originally, Robbins really didn't know that Jiang Hai likes to drink tea because he has never seen him drink it. But now, it seems that he can come to Jiang Hai's place to drink tea in the future. He immediately picked up the tea in front of him and gently blew the tea leaves that were still floating on the water surface. He took a small sip, and the fragrance instantly filled his mouth. There are many good and bad tea leaves. First of all, the most important thing is that the tea leaves can't have a bitter taste in the mouth. Jiang Hai spent so much money, so naturally, it is impossible for him to buy a bad tea. After taking a sip of tea, Robin's face showed a trace of a smile. As for Ai Hua and Philip, after seeing Robin's expression, they also took a small sip in a suspicious spirit. But then they frowned. They weren't scalded, but they were used to the taste of coffee. Drinking tea leaves would indeed make them feel that it wasn't tasty enough. Looking at the two of them, Jiang Hai chuckled. Fortunately, he did not prepare to give tea leaves as a gift. Tell me about the recent situation in the manor. After taking a sip of tea from the purple sand cup he bought, Jiang Hai asked the 3 people in front of him. On the way back, Philip, the chatterbox, told Jiang Hai about it. But the specific situation can only be explained by the two people who made the decision. Hearing Jiang Hai's question, the two looked at each other and Robin started to explain. Because it was easier for him to explain, the situation at the ranch was very simple. The spring snow had melted, and the grass in the Jiang Hai pasture had not been frozen to death. There was no need to wait for it to sprout and there was no need to replant it. All they needed to do was to clear the snow and let the cows out. With the work experience of the past few months, it was enough. With the help of the cattle dogs, it was easy to let the cattle out. In addition to the ranch, the vegetable garden was also officially reclaimed, but Jiang Hai still had to decide what to plant. Secondly, if Jiang Hai was going to make wine this year, it was almost time to start preparing now. Chapter 189. I know this, what about the fishery? Hearing Luo Binxi's words, Jiang Hai nodded. In fact, he also knew that the grapes were almost ripe and it was time to plant them. If it was in the northeast of Wuxia, they would start planting around March every year. After half a year, the grapes would be harvested in September. But this is Boston, which is much warmer than the northeast of Wuxia. The coldest time in winter is about -10 degrees Celsius at night, which is far worse than the northeast. So now they can plant grapes here. If they want to make red wine or ice wine, they can discuss it later, but the winemaker is not so easy to find. Unlike cowboys and fishermen, as long as there are acquaintances in the bar, they can definitely find a winemaker. A winemaker is a person with real craftsmanship. There is almost no gap for these people. Moreover, their income was quite high. They were indeed a high-income group in this country. At least, they wouldn't have much to do with cowboys and fishermen. If Jiang Hai wanted to find these people, he might have to find them through the union. This matter couldn't be rushed. Let's take it slowly. There are no problems in the fishery recently. The growth of the watergrass is pretty good. The bait and the like have basically been scattered. Now we just need to go around the fishery every day and sprinkle some food for these animals to prevent them from migrating. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson hurriedly said, no one is more concerned about the things underwater than him. When do we sprinkle the fry? Looking at Edward Anderson, Jiang Hai also asked him. This mainly depends on the weather. As long as it is March, it is not too cold and there are no continuous windy days, we can sprinkle the fry. I called Iron Bull the day before yesterday. He has already prepared the fry. These days he is sterilizing and storing them separately. After all, it is such a big business. If it fails, his loss will be even greater. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Dehua also said seriously. Hearing what Ai Dehua said, Jiang Hai also nodded. Jiang Hai is very relieved to leave the fishery to Ai Dehua. The reason why he asked this question now was mainly because he wanted to know what was going on. He couldn't possibly know nothing about his own fishery. If that was the case, his subordinates might not care too much about it. By the way, I heard that the fishery was attacked. What happened? After asking about the exact details of the ranch and the fishery, Jiang Hai turned his attention to the attack on the fishery. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Dehua and Luo Binxi, who were still laughing, became serious. After looking at each other, Ai Dehua spoke to Jiang Hai. It's not difficult to explain. The people in Boston already know about our fishery, but normal fishermen basically won't come and take risks. After all, we also have 5 good men plus Luo Binxi and the other cowboys. The fishery is still located in the coastal waters. Even some people from the ocean companies don't dare to come and fish, but there are some desperados who want to snatch a piece of meat from our mouth. Ai Dehua picked up the tea in front of him, took another sip and slowly talked to Jiang Hai. In fact, this matter is easy to solve. Money moves people's hearts. The fish in Jiang Hai's fishery are not only fish, but also green dollars. Some fishermen in Winthrop and Boston naturally know that those fish are money. It is impossible to say that they are not tempted. However, this is the United States. The fishery was bought by Jiang Hai, which means it is his territory. The things in the water are naturally his. Although the United States basically does not execute the death penalty, there is no upper limit to their prison term. You can be sentenced to 300 to 500 years. Most people are still very respectful of the law. If they can still live, they are not willing to break the law. Although the United States is not a paradise, as long as they are willing to work, it is not a problem to survive. It is precisely because of this that most of the fishermen who have families and businesses and are not courageous will not come to Jiang Hai's fishery to steal fish. Some of the more courageous ones, after learning that Jiang Hai recruited 5 good men, basically did not dare to come over. This is because if they are caught stealing fish, not to mention being beaten to death directly, they will be beaten half to death. then their gains will not make up for the losses. One must know that almost everyone in the United States has a gun. This is Jiang Hai's territory. If they break in, it will be fatal. With these two rules, most of the fishermen's thoughts are basically blocked. However, there are always some people who are not afraid of death. Just like those guys who came to Jiang Hai's fishery to steal fish. According to Edward Anderson's introduction, these people should be from the southern part of Boston. He is not clear about the specific gang name, but it should be an Irish gang because the criminals are all white. When Ai de Hua and the others found out that these people were stealing fish, they sent a signal to ask them to leave. However, they were cursed by these people. At the same time, when they fired to drive these people away, these people actually dared to fight back. They were very tough. After that, they sailed the boat to force these people to leave. However, they did not expect the boat to sail too fast. The waves rolled up and almost overturned the boat that those people were in. As a result, one of them fell into the sea. Ai de Hua and the others originally thought that it would be fine. However, they did not expect that just as this person was about to board the boat, Jiang Hai's big idiot suddenly jumped out of the sea. It went up and bit this guy's thigh, directly tearing off a piece of flesh from his leg. After all, there was blood. This matter could not be resolved peacefully. In the end, Ai de Hua called the police. After the police came, they arrested these people. After all, stealing fish is not a big deal. The next day they were bailed out. After that, there were always some strangers patrolling Jiang Hai's manor. However, the fishery was quiet. At first, Luo Binsi and Ai de Hua did not pay much attention to it. It was not until a few days ago that these people actually climbed in and went to the front of the residential area. Fortunately, Xiao Huang and Xiao Bai were vigilant and felt that something was wrong. The two big dogs attacked and woke everyone up. At the same time, they also tore off a piece of flesh from a person's arm. However, this incident also reminded Luo Binsi and Ai de Hua. It seems that the patrols at night should be strengthened in the future. Otherwise, who can guarantee that this kind of thing will not happen in the future? These guys are really getting bolder and bolder. Jiang Hai waved to Xiao Huang and Xiao Bai, who had done a meritorious deed. After calling them over, he rubbed their heads hard and narrowed his eyes at the same time. Although Luo Binsi and Ai de Hua did not say it explicitly, Jiang Hai was not stupid. If these guys really sneaked into his manor, no matter what their purpose was, Jiang Hai could not help but worry. If they attacked the cows for revenge, then Jiang Hai's loss would be great. If they directly attacked the people, Jiang Hai could not help but tilt his head. The consequences would be unimaginable. I looked at the outer fence next to our gate. There is only barbed wire. How about we build a wall, then pull the barbed wire on top and connect it with electricity? I don't believe that they would dare to come in. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai first proposed an idea. But when they heard Jiang Hai's words, Philip, Luo Binsi, and Ai de Hua's faces flashed with an unnatural smile. This kind of practice is very common in China, but it is not very common in the United States because the people in the United States advocate freedom and human rights. They are not willing to be locked in a narrow space, especially with walls that are isolated from the outside world. In most of the light punishment prisons in the United States, they use barbed wire to lock up prisoners, unlike the high walls in China. It can be seen how much the people in the United States hate being locked up. Jiang Hai looked at the appearance of these three people and knew what they were thinking in their hearts, so he just smiled and did not mention it. Since they are not willing to build a wall, then think of a way to strengthen the patrols. They can do this. At the same time, in addition to strengthening the patrols, they can also raise more dogs, but this time it is not to herd cattle but to guard the house, so they must choose some fierce dogs, just like Jiang Hai's little Huang and Xiao Bai. I'll see you later. I bought gifts for you. Come and pick them up at dinner time. Brother Philip, tell big sister to come and help cook if she's free in the afternoon. I'm going to take a look at my shark. Everything that needed to be said had been said, and it was time to give out rewards. The things that he brought back naturally had to be distributed. However, now was not the time. He wanted to go and see little Xia and Big Fool, whom he had not seen for a long time. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the three nodded and left Jiang Hai's villa. When Philip returned home, he went to call his wife to help. As for Jiang Hai, after giving the two sisters the things he bought, he rode his small car and left. He first went to the stable. At this time, the other horses in the stable had been released. After all, the cattle had begun to graze on the pasture, so the good helper of the cowboy naturally came in handy. The whole stable was empty. Only Jiang Hai's little Xia was still there, bored. When it saw Jiang Hai riding a small car, it couldn't help but snort happily. Jiang Hai's animals are very intelligent. After feeding it some carrots and chatting with it, Jiang Hai went to the dock, said goodbye to Ai Dehua, and drove a small boat to the depths of the sea. Shortly after Jiang Hai left the coral reef, a high dorsal fin rose from the sea. Feeling the excitement of the owner of the dorsal fin underwater, Jiang Hai smiled and took out a large piece of beef from his pocket. He used a knife to cut a drop of blood on his hand and smeared it on the beef. "This is your reward." Jiang Hai took the meat and put it by the water. Before he finished speaking, a huge pulling force suddenly came from the meat. Before Jiang Hai could let go, he was pulled straight into the sea. Chapter 190. Bang! With a loud noise, countless water splashed in all directions. Jiang Hai's mouth was wide open in surprise as he plunged into the sea. When he first entered the water, Jiang Hai was still very scared and panicked. But when he felt that he could breathe, he remembered that he was not afraid of water. It must be because he hasn't done this for a long time, so he was also a little confused. Feeling that Jiang Hai was beside him, Big Dumb over there while eating beef swam around Jiang Hai happily. "What the hell are you doing? You made me wet." Looking at Big Dumb beside him, Jiang Hai patted him and said with a look of disgust. Indeed, Jiang Hai himself was not afraid of water. His physical fitness allowed him to not be afraid of the cold, but his clothes were not. His whole body was wet and he still had to ride the motorcycle back. Thinking about it, well, it was hard to believe. Feeling Jiang Hai's mood, Big Dumb, who was still spinning fast, stopped spinning. Many sharks, like tuna, rely on swimming to breathe, but sand tiger shark is different. This kind of shark is more lying on the sand or in the cave during the day, and only comes out to hunt at night so it can stop. After this guy stopped, Jiang Hai also started to observe this big idiot that he raised. Unknowingly, this Big Dumb has grown bigger and bigger. Sand tiger shark was originally very ugly. Now it's getting uglier and uglier with a mouth full of big fangs, and a body that is far more than ordinary sand tiger shark, all of which indicate that this guy can be regarded as the overlord of the sea recently. The average sand tiger shark is only 3 to 3.5 meters long, but this sand tiger shark, after being improved by Jiang Hai's blood plus here, it doesn't have to worry about not having enough to eat. Its body length has grown to more than 4 meters and it seems to be still growing. If it continues to grow, Jiang Hai doesn't know if it will surpass the giant white shark in the sea, but it should not be a problem to surpass the tiger shark. At this time, the sunlight on the sea level is very strong, and the coastal seabed is also clearly visible. Looking along the sunlight, Jiang Hai saw countless small seaweeds on the seabed at this time, swaying with the water. The temperature of the sea is actually much higher than the temperature in the air, especially in winter. Look at Ice City, it's more than -20 degrees Celsius, and people still swim in winter. If it's more than -20 degrees Celsius, running on the shore with only underwear, no matter how fast you run, you will freeze to death. Therefore, after these seaweed seeds entered the seabed, they gradually grew by relying on the sediment on the seabed. Looking at it from afar, it looked like a grassland on the seabed. Although this grassland still looked a bit sloppy, it was still very ordinary. But this is a good sign anyway. At the same time, some small squid, octopus, and some small shells are constantly swimming on the soft sand or soil, looking for food. Although they are very curious and full of life, to be honest, the environment in the fishery is not very good now. Even if they grew up, they probably wouldn't be able to compare at all. Compared to the fishing grounds, the coral reef is really beautiful. Although this is Jiang Hai's second time in the sea, the first time he entered the sea, he was scared away by a shark swimming in the distance. This time he has a bodyguard by his side, and he also knows that the sharks near the coral reef are not too aggressive. He is ready to try it. "Follow me." Patting Big Dumb's head, Jiang Hai took the lead and swam toward the coral reef in the distance. When Big Fool saw Jiang Hai's action, he immediately swam over. While swimming, he vigilantly looked around. Although Jiang Hai can ignore the water pressure and breathe underwater, he can't swim like a fish. He can only swim like a human, so his speed is naturally not fast. The coral reef looks very close, but Jiang Hai swam for about 10 minutes before he reached the periphery. Speaking of corals, most people know about them and have seen them before, so they have some understanding of them. According to some knowledge channels, corals are actually piled up by the corpses of coral polyps. This saying is true but also not true. Corals are indeed piled up by the corpses of coral polyps, but not just corpses, there are also living coral polyps. This creature is a very strange creature. When the larva of a coral polyp is born, it is directly fixed on the lime bone pile piled up by the corpses of its predecessors, which are the corpses of other coral polyps. The corals we see are actually a kind of shell secreted by the coral polyps, so it is not easy to form such a thing. A long time ago, humans could only rely on the sky to feed on corals, which is why corals in ancient times were so expensive. But in recent years, artificial breeding of corals has actually achieved a lot. The main enemy of corals is the polluted water. As long as the water is kept clean, the growth of corals is actually not slow. In some pure waters in South America and Australia, many people have completed the preliminary breeding of corals. In fact, they just need to get a few pieces of corals, then fix them on an iron net and place them in places where the ocean currents pass. In this way, the corals will grow almost every few weeks or even a few months. When they grow for more than a year, they can be sold as finished products. It is precisely because of this that now, except for a few precious red corals, corals of other colors, especially white and gray, are very cheap. After all, corals are tropical things. Although there are a lot of them in Jianghai's fishery, there are obviously not too many treasures. There is a large area of corals, but almost none of them have really grown into trees. Most of them are 10 or 20 centimeters high. Most of the corals growing on some reefs are white, gray, black, blue, and some are yellow, pink, and red. This is the only valuable coral species, but there are not many of them. Jiang Hai glanced at them and found only a dozen, and they are all relatively small, only about 10 centimeters high. They are not worth picking. Compared to corals, Jiang Hai does not know much about them. He only knows that these corals are not to be picked casually. The color of the corals was different. Not only was the price different, but there were also differences in the corals themselves. For example, black and gray corals had very low hardness. Jiang Hai didn't know how to mine them. Compared to corals, Jiang Hai was the one who understood the most about the marine products that came from the coral reefs. As soon as he swam over, Jiang Hai saw a few sea snakes in the distance. But these sea snakes dare not come to trouble Jiang Hai. They are not afraid of Jiang Hai, but the sand tiger shark behind Jiang Hai. In recent days, Big Fool has become the overlord here. This area is his territory, and no fish or creature dares to make trouble in front of him. Jiang Hai swam with Big Fool. Although it is a bit like a fox taking advantage of Big Fool's power, it is true that all evil creatures will retreat. Even Jiang Hai saw a huge eel. After seeing the Big Fool, it took the initiative to shrink back into its hole. This bodyguard was not hired in vain. With bursts of waves, Jiang Hai swam to the top of these coral reefs. He looked down and saw a lot of sea cucumbers on the sand and reefs on the ground. These sea cucumbers are almost 20 centimeters long, and there are small ones of all kinds. In addition to these sea cucumbers, there are many shellfish on the reefs and even fist-sized abalones. Abalones were very valuable in China, but they weren't that valuable overseas. For example, in Australia, there were a lot of abalones in many parks and lakes. They were about the same size as these abalones, but they weren't allowed to be caught. Of course, the locals are not very interested in these things, but Jiang Hai is quite interested in these things. Beside the abalones, there are also a lot of big lobsters on the open space of the coral reefs. These Boston lobsters are even twice as big as the ones he ate in China. Maybe they felt Jiang Hai's attention. These lobsters also stopped, raised their big pincers and aimed at Jiang Hai and Big Fool. In addition to lobsters, abalones, and sea cucumbers, there are also countless shrimp and all kinds of fish on the seabed. Countless clownfish are drilling in and out of the sea anemones growing on the reefs. They are having fun, but Jiang Hai does not dare to provoke these guys. Everyone knows that there are 3 kinds of creatures in the water that should not be provoked: sea snakes, jellyfish, and sea anemones. These 3 things are poisonous. Fortunately, Jiang Hai has learned a lot about the sea recently as a fish farm owner. He knows that there are some things that should not be touched casually, so as long as he sees them, he will stay far away. The seabed is much more fun than the coast. Unknowingly, Jiang Hai also played in the coral reefs under the water for more than an hour. In just over an hour, he had learned a lot of things that he couldn't learn from books or television. This is only the deepest part of the sea. If Jiang Hai dives to 100 meters or 200 meters, he does not know what it will be like. Humans are more afraid of the unknown when they are not strong enough. Take Jiang Hai for example. Originally, he planned to not go into the sea before he reaches level 3, but now that he accidentally fell into the water, his mind gradually became active. Maybe when he reaches level 2 he can go into the sea. Seeing that the sun was about to set in the west and had already dyed the sea red, Jiang Hai also reacted. This is the time to leave, but how can you leave empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain? Jiang Hai can't swim as fast as the fish, so he gave up on catching fish. But there is no reason for him to let go of those lobsters, sea cucumbers, and abalones. Chapter 191. He returned to his small boat. Fortunately, the boat that Jiang Hai originally bought was not a small boat. Otherwise, the boat would have drifted to God knows where without an anchor after more than an hour. Fortunately, after anchoring the boat, Jiang Hai took a net from the boat and entered the sea again. He first went to catch lobsters. Compared to abalones and sea cucumbers, lobsters were obviously more suitable for Jiang Hai's feeding. Generally speaking, a Boston lobster that weighed about a pound could be caught because this size was enough to sell in the market. However, Jiang Hai obviously didn't think so, so he didn't catch lobsters that were shorter than 60 centimeters. In the end, he caught 2 lobsters that were about 70 centimeters long. The net he brought was already full. Although he didn't go ashore to weigh them, Jiang Hai felt that these 2 lobsters weighed 7 to 8 catties each. In China, they definitely wouldn't be worth less than tens of thousands. However, in Jiang Hai's sea, they weren't the biggest. Jiang Hai even saw one that was nearly a meter long, but this lobster was obviously very lively. Ordinary lobsters were very stupid. After seeing danger, their first thought was not to run, but to hold up their pincers and fight head-on with others. There were no words in their dictionary to run or hide, so these guys were very easy to catch. However, this guy that had turned into a demon obviously couldn't be counted as one of them. However, Jiang Hai was already very happy to have caught these 2 lobsters. There was no need to kill them all. After catching these 2 lobsters, Jiang Hai began to grab the sea cucumbers. Sea cucumbers were not very rare in the country. Of course, the price was a little expensive, but for the average working-class family, if they were ruthless enough to buy it, it would not be very expensive. It could only be said to be a high-end ingredient. However, in the United States, this thing was really worthless. People in the United States didn't eat sea cucumbers. Only specialized pharmaceutical companies would collect the internal organs of sea cucumbers to make medicine. Therefore, some fishermen would collect some internal organs of sea cucumbers when they were fishing. As for the sea cucumbers themselves, they would throw them back into the sea. No one ate this thing. In the few months that Jiang Hai had been in the United States, Jiang Hai had already gotten used to the squandering habits of the Americans. After knowing that Jiang Hai would eat sea cucumbers, Ai de Hua and the others would not only send the Arctic lobsters and crabs they caught to Jiang Hai every time they returned from sea, but they would also send sea cucumbers. Therefore, Jiang Hai wasn't too greedy for sea cucumbers. If he wanted to eat them, he could just grab some at any time. Therefore, he didn't catch too many, only 20 or so. It was enough for him to eat 2 meals. However, Jiang Hai was very interested in abalones. This was because these abalones were attached to the reef. Usually, when fishing, unless the abalones were migrating, the fishing net wouldn't be able to scrape them off. It was precisely because of this that Jiang Hai wanted to eat them. After hurriedly catching some lobsters and sea cucumbers, Jiang Hai went to the reef and prepared to catch the abalones. The abalones were quite easy to catch because they just stayed there. The problem was that their suction force was very strong. How to get them off the reef was a very troublesome thing. Damn, so tight. Because Jiang Hai could breathe freely, he didn't care and went up to scrape the abalones. It turned out that he was thinking too much. With Jiang Hai's strength, he used 90% of his strength, but the abalones still stayed firmly on the reef. In fact, those who knew how to dig abalones knew that to dig them, one had to bring a small knife or a small shovel. Only then could the abalones be removed from the reef. Now that Jiang Hai was using his hands to scrape the abalones, it would be strange if he could pull them off. Jiang Hai vaguely remembered that when he was in primary school, he once learned a lesson. It seemed to be about a European. In order to prove the existence of atmospheric pressure, he made an iron ball. Then he used 8 horses or even a few horses to pull it open for a long time. Jiang Hai's current physical fitness was the limit of a human. A human's strength couldn't be greater than a horse's, let alone 8 horses. Fortunately, this was an abalones. Jiang Hai might not be able to do anything to an abalones, but when it came to a stalemate, the reef wasn't that strong. With a bang, Jiang Hai finally got the abalones in his hands. However, at this time, under the abalones, there was a reef debris attached to it. In the end, the rock couldn't withstand it and exploded first. Looking at the abalones in his hands, Jiang Hai let out a long breath. This thing is too hard to dig up. Forget it, it's a victory if I can get one. I'll come back in a few days. Looking at the abalones in his hands, Jiang Hai decided not to fight with it anymore. Otherwise, when would he be done? Then he put the abalones into his net. As for the reef debris, he would slowly scrape it off when he returned. Just as Jiang Hai was about to return, a golden light suddenly flashed in the corner of his eyes. What's going on? Seeing this golden light, Jiang Hai, who was about to leave, couldn't help but be stunned. He immediately turned his head and looked at the source of the golden light. Following Jiang Hai's gaze, a gold coin flashing with dark red light appeared in front of Jiang Hai. When he saw this gold coin, Jiang Hai was stunned. What's going on? There's an unexpected harvest from digging up in abalones? Immediately, he swam to the side of the reef and looked at it. In the end, he discovered that the base of the reef wasn't a reef, but a huge box. This box was about 1 cubic meter in size. What Jiang Hai pulled off was the top right corner of the box. He didn't know how long this box had been here, but he was sure of one thing. The things in this box were definitely not modern toys. It was very likely that they were antiques. Originally, a box of gold was enough to make Jiang Hai excited. Now that this box of gold was an antique, Jiang Hai's eyes were a little fiery. His first thought was to bring this box home, but after looking around he found that there was no way to do so. In the end, he could only return to the ship and put the lobsters and sea cucumbers in the bag into the water trough. Then he dived into the water again. This time he didn't care about the box because the outside of the box was covered with reefs. He definitely couldn't move it. Instead of moving it with the worthless box, it was better to get the gold coins out first. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai didn't care about anything else. He directly knocked on the reef over there. Soon he knocked a big hole. After confirming that there was nothing dangerous here, Jiang Hai began to take out the gold coins. One by one he put the gold coins into the net he carried with him. Jiang Hai's eyes became brighter and brighter as he watched. While he was putting the coins in, Jiang Hai was also counting. There were a total of 427 gold coins in this box. Looking at these gold coins, Jiang Hai's hands trembled. He really made a fortune this time. He had been worried that he wouldn't have enough money. He didn't expect that someone would give him a pillow as soon as he fell asleep. The gold coins were about 15 grams each. Because Jiang Hai didn't know how long they had been refined, he estimated that these gold coins were at least 80 to 100 years old. After such a long time, it would be good if these gold coins could be refined to 10 grams after such a long time. There were 427 pills, which added up to about 4,000 grams. Based on the calculation of 200 per gram, that was only 800,000 yuan. This was in RMB, which was only a little more than $100,000 in US dollars. Although Jiang Hai didn't have much money and he was quite short of money at the moment, he didn't lack $100,000 for such a big family business. What he cared more about was the historical significance behind these gold coins. Even if these gold coins only had 100 years of history, when the time comes, these 400 gold coins would not be exchanged for just a few 100,000. They would most likely become hundreds of thousands, millions, or even millions. This made Jiang Hai extremely tempted. Carrying these gold coins, Jiang Hai quickly returned to the boat. Without caring that his clothes were still wet, he took out a water tank and put the lobster, sea cucumber, and abalone on the top. As for the bottom, he put a layer of gold coins. Guard this place well. I'll come to see you when I have time. Patting the sand tiger shark's head, Jiang Hai started the boat's engine and sped toward the dock on the shore. By the time he came back, it was already past 6 o'clock in the evening. The earth was gradually covered in darkness. Only Luo Binsi was still here because he was still a little worried about Jiang Hai going out to sea. When he saw Jiang Hai come back wet, he was also very surprised. When he learned that it was Big Fool who pulled Jiang Hai into the water, he couldn't help but laugh. He knew that Big Fool liked to pull people into the water. Jiang Hai's fishermen all had this experience, but this shark was really smart. It could recognize people in the fishery, so at first, everyone was very panicked when they were pulled into the sea, but then they slowly calmed down. It was just that Jiang Hai didn't know that. The two of them rode 2 modified 4-wheeled motorcycles and sped all the way back to Jiang Hai's villa. When Jiang Hai returned, he found that the food and other things were basically prepared. The house was full of fragrance, which made Jiang Hai's fingers itch. The cowboys and fishermen were divided into 2 groups and gathered in Jiang Hai's living room to talk. As for Daliana and Marian, they were also happily chatting with the other 8 sisters. Since these girls came to Jiang Hai's manor, a lot of changes had happened. At least they had enough to eat, wear warm clothes, and have some money to spend. There was an obvious change in their spirits. These days they had gained a lot of weight. However, they didn't look fat because they were originally too thin. After gaining so much weight, they didn't even weigh more than 100 pounds. However, the more beautiful they were, the more they attracted the attention of the women. Chapter 192. When Jiang Hai pushed open the door of the villa, his figure also attracted everyone's attention. Boss. The cowboys and fishermen immediately greeted him with smiles, but the ones who walked the fastest were the 8 girls. But when the 8 girls saw Jiang Hai's wet appearance, they were all stunned. Then they didn't care about the fishy smell on Jiang Hai's body and greeted him with smiles, each of them giving Jiang Hai a hug. Seeing these girls' actions, the women who were originally very wary of these girls calmed down a little. It seemed that these girls didn't have much interest in their old man. In fact, from their point of view, they didn't care what story Jiang Hai had with these girls. If Jiang Hai had the leisure to accept these girls, then they would definitely be the happiest. Oh, hello, I also bought you a gift. I'll give it to you after we finish eating. Although Jiang Hai already knew that a hug in the United States wasn't too much, he wasn't from the United States after all, so his face was a little awkward. But he was still holding the box in his hand at this time, so he couldn't let go because the box was full of gold coins. The door was only so big so he couldn't dodge or let go, so he could only accept it with a red face and then said awkwardly, "Welcome back." Seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, the leader of the girls, Aphrodite Arnold, used sign language to signal to Jiang Hai. Seeing Aphrodite's watery eyes and obedient appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shudder. He immediately drove out the things that he couldn't write in his mind and shouted to Luo Binsi, who was watching the show in the distance. "Luo Binsi, come and help." Okay. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luo Binsi also immediately walked over with a smile. "Ai de Hua too." After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai also said to Ai de Hua, who followed him in. Luo Binsi might not understand why Jiang Hai wanted him to help, but Ai de Hua knew very well because he just opened the box in Jiang Hai's hand and saw that there were only 2 lobsters, some sea cucumbers and an abalone. What was there to clean up? But since the boss spoke, Ai de Hua didn't refute, but nodded, and the 3 of them walked into the cold storage next to them. "Boss, isn't it just 2 lobsters? You usually clean up by yourself. Why didn't you know how to clean up after returning to Wuxia?" Walking into the cold storage, Jiang Hai opened the lid of the box. As soon as he saw the things inside the box, Luo Binsi smiled. He felt that Jiang Hai was making a big deal out of nothing. Eating lobsters is actually very simple. It's very simple in the United States. There are nothing more than 3 ways to cook it. Roast it, steam it, and bake it. Roast and bake it are very simple. Brush the dirty things on the shell, then fry the feet below, and cut a line from the back to clean up the dirty things. Steaming it is a bit troublesome. You need to brush the things on the shell clean first, then put it in water with sesame oil overnight. When it spits out the dirty things, it can be steamed. So the people in the United States don't eat steamed lobsters too much. For them, cleaning up lobsters is really not troublesome. As for sea cucumbers, they don't eat them. Abalone, there is only one. What's so good about it? Not this thing, it's this. Seeing the puzzled eyes of the 2 people, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes at them, then took off the top lid, revealing a pile of glittering gold coins below. "Oh my god, what is this, gold?" Seeing the gold coins below, Luo Binsi, who was still laughing, instantly knelt on the ground. Looking at the gold in front of him, he felt a little dazed. Boss, where did you get this?" On the other hand, although Ai de Hua was slightly better off than him, he was also trembling all over. Although there wasn't much gold, the impact was indeed much greater than money and whatnot. Pointing to the gold coins in the box, Ai de Hua swallowed and asked in a low voice. "Shu, you 2 are the people I trust the most. That's why I asked you to give me some advice. I don't understand what's written on it. Is it valuable?" Jiang Hai made a gesture to the 2 of them to keep their voices down. He picked one up and said, "The gold coin that Jiang Hai picked up is divided into 2 sides. On one side there is a face of a person. It should be a fat man with not much hair. There is also an olive branch on his head. On the fat man's head, it is written George versus I de Gria. Jiang Hai can't understand what it means. The back seems to be a badge, but because it has been soaking in the water for too long, he is also a little unclear. He had seen it once when he was on the boat and he didn't know what the hell it was, so he came back to ask these 2 people. It's not that Jiang Hai doesn't trust others, but the fewer people who know about this, the better. In this manner, Jiang Hai trusts his pets the most. In addition to the pets, there are only Luo Binsi and Ai de Hua. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hand over the cowboys and fishermen to them. Even Delina and Marion don't make Jiang Hai feel at ease. "I don't know." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luo Binsi on the other side first picked up a piece and looked at it, then shook his head helplessly. Hearing his words, Ai de Hua on the other side also picked it up. He was not very sure. He could only vaguely say, "This? I don't know, but it seems to be a British gold coin." "What year is it?" Hearing Ai de Hua's words, Jiang Hai also touched his chin and thought for a while. "I don't know this. I have to find a professional to identify it." Shrugging, AI Dehua threw the gold coin back into the box. That boss, we will go out first. This box of gold, although it is not much and it is not worth much if it is sold as gold, but if it is an antique then it is worth a lot. You have to take care of it. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Binsi stood up and said to Jiang Hai. To be honest, no one doesn't like money, but Luo Binsi and AI Dehua both know that their jobs are far from what money can buy, so their greed has not risen yet and they are strangled by themselves. Okay, I got it. Keep it as a souvenir for you. Don't tell others. Hearing Luo Binsi's words, Jiang Hai also smiled with satisfaction. The reason why he called these two people in was mainly because he knew that these two people were very good at dealing with people. At the moment he didn't say much. More than 400 gold coins, Jiang Hai didn't care much about it. He picked one from the pile and threw it to the two people. The two people didn't refuse. They put it in their arms carefully and then left the room. As for Jiang Hai, he first cleaned up the two lobsters and then simply cleaned up the sea cucumber. After a while he can cook it directly in the evening. As for the money, he moved it to the second floor and put it in the closet. When he came down, he had already changed into new clothes as if nothing had happened. The banquet began. This night it can be said that the guests and the host were happy. Everyone had a good meal. When they left, Jiang Hai also gave his gift. According to the old man of the Wuxia store, Jiang Hai's gift was not very expensive. It was more like some handicrafts and souvenirs, but these people were very happy. The group of people left happily. After these people left, only Daliana, Marian, and Jiang Hai stayed here. After the father and daughter group cleaned up the house, it was already very late, so they went back to their rooms to sleep. But after Jiang Hai lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep well if he didn't understand those gold coins. After thinking for a while, among the people he knew, it seemed that only Moses Adams could understand these things. So he called Moses Adams. Fortunately, Moses Adams had just returned home and hadn't gone to bed yet. When he saw that it was Jiang Hai calling, he immediately picked it up. He was still very concerned about Jiang Hai as a customer. Hi boss, did you have fun in Wuxia? Why did you suddenly think of calling me? No, I came back today. It's like this. I got some gold coins in my fish farm. Can you help me check if they are valuable and when they are? Jiang Hai also knew that people in the United States like to be straightforward. After he greeted him, he went straight to the point. When he heard that Jiang Hai didn't call to exchange pleasantries, Moses Adams also became serious. Boss, I don't know much about these things, but you can send me a picture and I'll ask my friend. Don't worry, it won't leak out. Hearing Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai didn't hesitate. In terms of money, he still trusted Moses Adams. Jiang Hai immediately found a gold coin, took a dozen pictures of it from different angles, and sent them to Moses Adams. Not long after, Moses Adams replied, Boss, if I'm not mistaken, this gold coin of yours should be a George III gold coin minted in England in 1804. The current stock isn't too much, but it's not too little either. According to my friend, one coin is worth about $400. $400? Hearing Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai raised his eyebrows, and there was a hint of excitement in his words. Boss, do you have a lot of these gold coins? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams frowned. $400 was a lot? Shaking his head, Jiang Hai told Moses Adams the truth. Not a lot, only 400. That's less than 200,000. Boss, you don't have to go that far. After some calculations, 200,000 was not a lot for Jiang Hai. You don't understand. With a mysterious smile, Jiang Hai hung up the phone. 400 was not a lot. What if it was 4,000 or 40,000? Chapter 193. Puff. There was another splash of water, and Jiang Hai's figure fell back into the water. As Jiang Hai entered the water, a huge shadow appeared beside Jiang Hai and kept wandering around. Patting the head of the sand tiger shark beside him, Jiang Hai chuckled and swam toward the coral reef in the distance. This was the second day since Jiang Hai came back, and also the second day after he found the gold coins. Last night, after he learned the value of the gold coins, he didn't have a good rest. In his mind he was thinking about the news about these gold coins. Why these gold coins are here, how they got here, who put them here, or what kind of accident happened. Jiang Hai didn't care at all. According to Moses Adams's friend, the gold coins were likely to be related to the war between Britain and the United States. The so-called war between Britain and the United States was also called the Second Independence War. It had a special meaning for the United States, but for Jiang Hai, it didn't mean anything. After all, Jiang Hai wasn't from this country. For him, he only knew that the gold coins were worth $400 and that was enough. When he was lying in bed yesterday, he vaguely remembered that there seemed to be a lot of reefs like that. There were more than 400 gold coins in this box, which was nearly $200,000. If there were 10 boxes, it would be $2 million. If there were 100 boxes, it would be $20 million. Recently, he had almost no money in his bank account. Including this year's tax, Jiang Hai's assets were estimated to be only $8 million. Originally, he also knew that there was a lot of wealth in the sea, but he had been conflicted because the sea was terrifying for him. But now, it seemed that it didn't matter if it was in front of his house. The most important thing was that Jiang Hai really should find a way to make some money. Although he could wait until the beef show in April, there were still 2 months. During these 2 months, Jiang Hai couldn't just sit around and eat. So this morning after breakfast he left the villa. This time he was much better prepared than he was yesterday. Not only did he change into a warm diving suit, but he also specially brought a new bag, a small shovel, and a knife to deal with the problems in the sea. After driving the boat to the furthest position of the coral reef, Jiang Hai fixed the boat there. When the boat arrived, Big Dumb had already appeared. After discovering that it was Jiang Hai, it was obviously very excited. After Jiang Hai threw a large piece of beef to it, he changed his clothes and turned over to enter the water. Jiang Hai didn't need to worry about breathing in the water, plus he was wearing a diving suit, so the resistance was much lower than yesterday. After meeting with Big Dumb, Jiang Hai took a pile of things and quickly swam to the reefs in the distance. Originally, before digging out the treasure chest, Jiang Hai didn't care about these reefs, thinking that they were just the base of the coral. But now, these seemingly ordinary reefs represented boxes of wealth. He found the reef that he dug out the treasure chest from yesterday, then waved his pickaxe and smashed a reef that was similar to it not far from it. These limestone reefs were not Jiang Hai's opponent. Because the reefs themselves weren't big and the box itself wasn't small, Jiang Hai didn't need to destroy the reefs. He didn't even need to touch the sea anemones, sponges, seaweed and corals on the reefs. He only needed to open a hole next to the box, and then he would be able to see if there was anything inside. Jiang Hai's luck wasn't too good. The first piece he opened was just an ordinary reef and there was nothing inside. He knocked out a deep hole about 20 centimeters in diameter and 10 centimeters in depth. There was nothing inside except for limestone rocks. Although he already knew that this was a weak spot, Jiang Hai couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. But it was impossible for him to give up so quickly, so he opened the second one. Bang bang bang. The speed of sound in the water was really slow. Even Jiang Hai couldn't hear it clearly. The knocking sound was so close that he could only feel the ripples of the water and the scattered stone fragments. Finally, when he knocked out a hole on the third reef, the same rusty black metal chest appeared in front of him. As he used his strength again, the chest was also cut open by him. A gold coin exactly the same as yesterday rolled out of the chest along with the water and floated down. Yeah. Waving his fist vigorously, Jiang Hai looked at the floating gold coin and couldn't help but shout in his heart. It turned out that Jiang Hai's guess was not wrong. The chest of gold coins didn't float here, or someone threw them here. They were really in batches, sunk here more than 100 years ago or 200 years ago. But why did these people do it? Jiang Hai didn't know. It didn't look like a sunken ship, because even if it was a ship that had sunk for hundreds of years in such a shallow sea, it would have been discovered by others long ago. These gold coins seemed to be a treasure chest that someone deliberately sunk here, not a ship. But no matter what the person who originally threw these gold coins thought, these things now belonged to Jiang Hai anyway. As Jiang Hai swung his pickaxe quickly, it didn't take long for the chest to be opened. Then Jiang Hai also took all the gold coins in the chest into his bag. There were also more than 400 gold coins. He didn't count the specific number, but the number should be about the same. With a harvest, Jiang Hai became more diligent and quickly swam to the next reef. During this time, Big Fool had been staying above Jiang Hai's head, helping Jiang Hai to guard the surroundings. It turned out that the energy contained in beef was indeed much more than that of fish. Sharks consumed a lot of physical strength in the water. Therefore, fish like them, or tunas, need to constantly swim to obtain food. But now, after eating beef, Big Fool obviously had more energy than usual, which made him feel even more hungry. In this way, Jiang Hai unknowingly dug for more than 3 hours. During this time, there were times when he dug and times when he didn't dig. The ratio was about 3 to 1. Of the 3 that he couldn't dig, there was 1 that he could dig. But even with this ratio, Jiang Hai had dug almost a dozen chests. Looking down, the bag that he originally used to store the gold coins was almost full at this time. It seemed that he had to transport them back. And looking up, Jiang Hai had only dug about 1/30th of this reef of similar size. Jiang Hai's reef group was really not small. Go back to eat first, I'll come back later. Although Jiang Hai's physical fitness could be said to be the limit of human beings, with such high intensity working underwater for so long, he also couldn't bear it. Looking at Big Fool, who was already hungry and circling above his head, Jiang Hai also smiled and swam back to the boat. Of course, when he left, he caught a few crabs, a lobster, and some abalones. He didn't eat them yesterday, so he had to try them tonight. The abalones that Jiang Hai dug were the largest, about half a gene each. These were the best two-headed abalones. Jiang Hai didn't have much opportunity to eat them before. Today was really his lucky day. After getting on the boat, Jiang Hai asked Big Fool to look for food while he changed his clothes. Just like yesterday, he put the gold coins below and the seafood he caught on top. Then he drove the boat back to the dock. At the dock, Edward Anderson was instructing everyone to check the situation of the boat. They had already patrolled once in the morning, and were going to do it again in the afternoon. Although everyone was a little curious about their boss, Jiang Hai, and wondered what Jiang Hai was doing alone at sea for half a day, Ai Dehua knew that this mysterious Mr. Dongfang was not someone they could inquire about. After suppressing the fisherman's curiosity and helping Jiang Hai fix the chests, Jiang Hai returned home. When he got home, Mrs. Philemon had already prepared lunch. Jiang Hai had a simple meal and said goodbye to Daliana and Marian. Then he carried 10 gene of beef and left again. In the afternoon he went to the same area again. After giving the beef to Big Fool, who had followed the sound, he dived into the bottom of the sea again. When he went back at noon, he roughly counted the gold coins that he had gotten in the morning. There were a total of 6,217 gold coins. If one gold coin could be sold for $400, that would be nearly $5 million. Whatever he did, he could earn more than $2 million in a single morning. When he dived into the sea again and looked at the reefs in front of him, they were no longer gray reefs, but Franklins that glittered with green light. With the stimulation and encouragement of money, Jiang Hai dug hard again. Perhaps it was because he had gained a lot of experience in the morning, but Jiang Hai's fighting strength increased again in the afternoon. When the blood-red sun shone on the surface of the sea, Jiang Hai had finished digging the 21st chest that he had found in the afternoon. There were indeed many chests in this area. It's time to go back. As he picked up the gold coins that fell from the chests, Jiang Hai looked at the sea that had been dyed red above his head. Just as Jiang Hai felt that he had picked up all the gold coins in the chest and was about to leave, he suddenly saw a small iron box in the big chest. What is this? Jiang Hai casually took out the small iron box and looked at it strangely. Chapter 194. Clang 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 clang. Bursts of deafening music kept ringing in a slum street in the southern part of Boston. Because of its age, the walls could not completely isolate the music, but they did not stop the music from spreading out. But the people living here did not come out to say that they were disturbing the residents, or that they were too noisy. First, they did not dare to. Second, they were used to it. Even at this time there were many people living nearby. If they walked forward at this time, they would find that there were some problems with the sign of this bar, because the neon lights outside the bar at this time did not show anything like home or song. It was a normal bar name. There was only one word flashing on it, Negro. If Jiang Hai were here at this time, he would be very surprised because this word was specifically told by the mayor of Winthrop Town that he should never mention it in front of black people, because this word also meant black slaves. But at this time, these people dared to brazenly hang this word as a signboard here. It was obvious that the people inside were definitely not good people. And that was the truth. If the scene was pushed forward and they walked into this bar, they would find that this place was really hell. Walking into this bar, they would find that there were some high platforms around the bar. At this time, there was a woman standing on each high platform, swaying violently with the music, making some seductive gestures from time to time. When the mood of the audience was raised to the highest point, they would directly take off their clothes and dance on the high platform naked. If some men below took a fancy to them, or if they took a fancy to them, they might directly sit on the high platform and jump into their arms. The smell of hormones was not only concentrated in the corridors and bathrooms, but even in the hall. Some people even did that on the spot. Kissing and kissing were no longer their pursuit. Now they preferred to go straight to the point. Accompanied by the madness of these people, in some corners that people could not see, some punks with tattoos on their bodies were also there, peddling some things that the government did not allow to be sold, such as Red Bull. Alright, although the effects were about the same, the nature was much worse. When Jiang Hai was in New York, The place that Moses Adams took him to was simply a gentleman's cocktail party compared to this place. This was the place where people released their most primitive desires. But the people here had one thing in common: they were all white. Not to mention blacks, Asians, and even Hispanics were completely absent here. All of them were pure Caucasians with blonde hair and blue eyes. Looking down from the top, it was really a sea of white. At this time, on the second floor of the bar, a man with long blonde hair, wearing a green military vest, camouflage trousers, and military boots was sitting there, smoking a cigar in his mouth while looking at the crazy scene below. In his eyes, besides a trace of bloodthirst, there was also a trace of arrogance. In addition to him, there were 4 other men standing in the room. They were dressed differently from him. These 4 men were all in black suits and wore sunglasses. They looked a little bit like humans and dogs. Go in. Just as he was enjoying the performance of the hot chicks on the main stage below, a group of 4 people also pushed a man in from outside. After the man came into the room, one of the 4 people also walked forward. "Boss, we've brought the person you wanted us to find." Hearing this person's words, the man could not help but turn his head and look at the person who was pushed in. This person was not bad looking, more than 1.8 meters tall, and he was quite strong. But from his body, his eyes, and his words and deeds, this man was obviously somewhat out of place in this place, and he was even not used to it. "You must be Augustine Wilson. Faraday must be your younger brother." The man casually flicked the ash of the cigar to the ground, took a deep breath, then slowly stood up and looked at the man with a serious face and said, "Yes, if it's because of him that you called me here, then I may have to say sorry, because he has already gone in. At least he shouldn't be able to come out in the near future. If he owes you money, then I will find a way to pay it for him." Looking at the person walking over, although he was very afraid, Augustine also knew that if he showed enough cowardice at this time, they will bully him to death, so he still raised his head and looked at the blonde man in front of him. No, you may have misunderstood. Your brother is my brother's good brother. You should have heard of my brother's name. He is called Bunyan Wallen. They should be cellmates now." Looking at Augustine Wilson, the man on the other side also said with a smile, but when he heard his words, a trace of fear flashed in Augustine's eyes. His body involuntarily took a step back, but the 2 men in black behind him immediately stepped forward and grabbed his hand in an instant. One of them even grabbed his hair and put his face in front of the blonde man. "Don't you want to avenge your brother?" Seeing Augustine's appearance, the blonde man walked over with a smile, blew a puff of smoke on Augustine's face, and a trace of evil flashed across his face and said softly, "What is this?" At the same time, Jiang Hai also walked back to his villa with stars draped over him. At this time he was carrying a box in his left hand. On the top of the box was the marine goods that Jiang Hai caught in the afternoon, and below the marine goods were the 21 boxes of gold coins. According to an average of about 430 gold coins per box, these 21 boxes would have at least 9,000 gold coins. 9,000 gold coins, plus the 6,000 gold coins he caught in the morning, he would have a daily income of 15,000 gold coins. If 1 gold coin was 400, that would be more than 6 million. Thinking about it, Jiang Hai was also a little excited. But at this time, his attention was attracted by the small notebook in his right hand. This small notebook was the thing in the small iron box. He had to admit that the small iron box's sealing performance was really good. After more than 100 years, except for the paper of the notebook that couldn't be more yellow, there was not much water in the iron box, so this small notebook could be preserved. After soaking in the sea for such a long time, although the notebook was not rotten and could be flipped through normally, it was inevitable that the handwriting on it would be a little messy, but it did not hinder reading. But what made Jiang Hai the most depressed was that the notebook was indeed in English. When he opened it up, he knew each word, but when they were put together into a sentence, he had a feeling of being unable to make sense of it. After reading it, he roughly figured out that this should be a diary. The person who wrote this diary was called John Wiltord. His identity seemed to be a major, and he was an Englishman. However, he was a little confused about what was written in it. Just when Jiang Hai was about to go back and ask about the internet, he returned to his villa. When he opened the door of the villa, he saw 3 figures sitting at the table and chairs in the living room not far away. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the 3 people also looked over. Among the 3 people, Delina and Marion were naturally present. In addition to them, there was also Shenty Clive. Jiang Hai was familiar with such a scene. Because since Delina and Marion came to Jiang Hai's home, he wanted the 2 girls to go to school. Shenty Clive was naturally the first choice, but Shenty Clive was later persuaded by Jiang Hai. After all, the two girls' situation was somewhat special. It was indeed a little excessive for them to go to primary school when they were supposed to be in junior high school. Most importantly, the two girls' problems made them easy to bully in school. It was precisely because of this that Xanthi Clive decided to let the two children study at home. When she was free, she would come over to give them a small class and tutor them. Jiang Hai wanted to give her money, but she didn't accept it. However, every time she left, Jiang Hai would bring her some beef. Although Xanthi Clive knew that the price of beef outside was sky high, it was really nothing for Jiang Hai, so she didn't refuse. Seeing that she often brought this kind of expensive beef home, her family members all encouraged her to pursue Jiang Hai. At least for her French chef father, Jiang Hai was the best son-in-law in the world. Seeing Jiang Hai come back, Xanthi Clive stood up and said with a smile, "You're back." "Oh I'll go change my clothes first." Now that he saw Xanthi Clive, Jiang Hai's face suddenly turned red. He didn't think about it before, but just a few days ago, he was still fantasizing about his potential marriage partner on his bed at home. In the end, Xanthi Clive won with an absolute majority of votes. Who asked Jiang Hai to only know her. Now that he saw her again, Jiang Hai really felt a little embarrassed. "Okay then, let's continue." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xanthi Clive didn't think too much about it, but sat down and continued to talk. As for Jiang Hai, he went upstairs. After putting away the gold coins, Jiang Hai also took a bath and changed his clothes. When he was about to go downstairs, he saw the diary that he threw aside. He couldn't understand it, but perhaps Xanthi Clive could. After all, no matter what, she was a purebred American and also a teacher, so there should be no problem with her knowledge. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai also took down the small book. When he went downstairs, Daliana and Marian had also finished the questions and were packing up. "Just in time, Teacher Xanthi, you haven't had dinner yet, right? Let's eat here." Seeing that Xanthi Clive was also packing up, Jiang Hai walked over with a smile and said to her, "It's okay, I'll eat when I go back." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xanthi Clive shook her head. In the United States, there was no such thing as eating together. Generally speaking, eating together had to be arranged in advance. "Hey, you also know the habits of us Asians. You can eat here. In fact, they are all semi-finished products. I'll roast some lobsters, get some abalones and fry a steak. By the way, if you have nothing to do, help me look at this." Jiang Hai heard Xanthi Clive's words. How could he let you go so easily? The little book hasn't been translated yet. Chapter 195. Where did you get this from? It doesn't look fake. Looking at the notebook in her hand, the paper on it was yellow and brittle. Although Xanthi Clive wasn't a professional appraiser, she also knew that this kind of paper couldn't become like this without decades or even hundreds of years. This made her a little confused. "Hey, these are small things, don't worry about it. By the way, how is school?" Jiang Hai laughed. He didn't want to lie. Naturally, he couldn't let others have a share in this matter. So he just laughed and said no more. As for Xanthi Clive, he didn't know if she really understood, or if she was really forced to change the topic, so she talked to Jiang Hai about school. Although Xanthi Clive was a teacher, she didn't seem to have any relationship with Jiang Hai, who was ignorant and incompetent. But in fact, the two still had quite a lot to talk about. Jiang Hai was a real foodie, and Xanthi Clive was born in a family of French chefs, so the two didn't seem to be too bored when they were together. Now, the two had other topics besides eating, which was about Delina and Marian's studies. Unknowingly, they ate until 10 o'clock in the evening. It wasn't until Xanthi Clive's sister called her that she realized that she had to go home. After Jiang Hai glanced at the time, he also stood up. "I'll drive you. It's so late and you didn't drive. It's not safe to go back." Looking at Xanthi Clive, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Originally, Jiang Hai wanted her to stay. Don't get me wrong, Jiang Hai didn't want to do anything. He wasn't that despicable. Of course, if Xanthi Clive took the initiative, then he would half refuse. Is it really good to use this word on a man? Of course, Jiang Hai was just thinking about it. He knew that even if he said that he wanted to detain Xanthi Clive, she must go back. Alright. After hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to give her a ride, Xanthi Clive didn't refuse. After all, it was not her first time to refuse. She waited for Jiang Hai to put on his clothes. After that, they came to the parking lot and started the F650 before speeding towards Winthrop Town. Looking at the flashing taillights of the pickup truck, Delina and Marian exchanged glances with each other on the second floor. "What do you think about letting Aunt Xanthi be our mother?" Looking at Delina, Marian gestured. If that's really the case, it's really nagging Jiang's blessing. Daliana saw Marian's hand language and quickly gestured. Although the two girls were very obedient in front of Jiang Hai, they didn't think that Jiang Hai was really their father. Daliana even gave Jiang Hai a nickname, Nagging Jiang. Indeed, Jiang Hai was very nagging sometimes. Then let's hope our father can do it. Seeing Daliana's expression, Marian turned around and lay on her big bed. She looked at the ceiling happily with a Winnie the Pooh lampshade that Jiang Hai had specially changed for them. She had never dreamt of such a life before. She was truly blessed to be living here. Looking at her younger sister's expression, Daliana also smiled. It was also her wish that her younger sister could live so happily. At this moment, Jiang Hai and SH-20 Clive, who were in the car, didn't know what the two girls were thinking about. At this moment, the two were talking about a dish that SH-20 Clive had just learned to cook, braised veal with white sauce. It was also a kind of stew and one of the most classic dishes in French cuisine. It was the same as braised beef with red wine. However, red wine was also added here, but not much, so the soup was white. Although Jiang Hai wasn't very talented in cooking, he was willing to give it a try sometimes. If he used the beef brisket or tendon in his manner to cook this dish, the taste would be quite good. As they talked and listened, they sped off in Winthrop's direction. However, the two men didn't notice that when Jiang Hai's car left the manor, a motorcycle in the distance also started its engine and slowly followed. At the same time, he also called Boston. As his phone rang, many motorcycles plus a few cars also left the southern part of Boston with a whistling sound. They were speeding towards Winthrop. Judging from their leather jackets, steel pipes and baseball bats, it wasn't hard to tell that they didn't come with good intentions. Just as these people were speeding towards Winthrop, Jiang Hai had already sent SH-20 Clive back to her home. He had just parked the car downstairs of SH-20 Clive's house. On the second floor, a face that looked like SH-20 Clive stretched out. "Hey, it's so late. Are you going to send my sister back? Are you stupid?" The owner of the pretty face looked at Jiang Hai and SH-20 Clive, who had gotten out of the car downstairs, and said loudly to Jiang Hai. Hearing this person's words, Jiang Hai's face flashed with embarrassment. "What's going on? Hey Karma. Is your butt itchy again? Don't mind it. This child is usually crazy like this. You have seen her once before in the Sea Temple." With a shrug, SH-20 Clive first yelled at Karma Cliff, then said apologetically to Jiang Hai. After her reminder, Jiang Hai remembered. It seemed to be true. Then he waved at Karma Cliff. As for Karma Cliff, she obviously didn't appreciate Jiang Hai's goodwill. Instead, she stuck out her tongue at Jiang Hai, then went back. Seeing his sister, SH-20 Clive didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Then that's it for now. I have class tomorrow, so the day after tomorrow, I'll teach Delina and Marian. You should go back quickly. It's getting late." Turning his head, SH-20 Clive looked at Jiang Hai behind him and said with a smile. Hearing SH-20 Clive's words, Jiang Hai also nodded. After watching SH-20 Clive go into the house, Jiang Hai also returned to his car, started the engine and went to his manor. "Sister, you haven't taken this guy down yet." Seeing SH-20 Clive go up to the second floor, Karma Cliff, who lived next door, couldn't help but stretch her head out and look at her sister with contempt. "What are you talking about? I'm just pitying that pair of sisters. Who told you that there's something going on between me and Jiang Hai?" Facing her sister's questioning, SH-20 Clive's face couldn't help but turn red. She didn't know if it was because of the cold or something else, but she stubbornly refused. She opened the door of her room and spoke casually. "Keep pretending, do you think I'm a kid who doesn't know anything?" Karma Cliff looked at her sister with contempt and said, "If Jiang Hai isn't interested in you, why would he give you beef every time you leave? He gave you a lot today. That pound of beef, according to my dad, is 400 pounds. If he gives you 10 pounds, that's $4,000. How much is your monthly salary? Also, if he really isn't interested in you, he's so rich, why wouldn't he find a full-time tutor? Also, if you're not interested in him, why would you accept his beef? And he sends it to your door every time. Stop joking around." Obviously, Karma Cliff felt that her sister's words were quite untrustworthy. "Ahem, what do you know, little brat? Go to sleep." Hearing her sister's words, SH-20 Clive's face turned even redder. She immediately rolled her eyes at her sister, then pushed open the door of her room and walked in. Lying on her bed, SH-20 Clive was also thinking about how she and Jiang Hai felt. However, this had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. At least, it had nothing to do with him right now. He was indeed lacking a marriage partner, but he wouldn't marry just for the sake of marriage. After all, one experience was enough. Jiang Hai listened to the radio as he drove to his manor. Before he knew it, he had already left Winthrop. The surrounding scenery became more and more desolate. Jiang Hai's manor was in the suburbs. This was inevitable. If such a large manor was in the county, it would be worth more than 280 million. If such a place with a sea view was used to build villas and sell houses, it would be more profitable than raising fish. Therefore, after leaving Winthrop before arriving at Jiang Hai's manor, there was a 10-minute road that was relatively desolate. However, Jiang Hai never believed in ghosts or gods. He was also a skilled and daring person. There was nothing to be afraid of on this road. However, as the old saying went, if you walk too much at night, you will inevitably encounter ghosts. Just like now. Jiang Hai was driving forward, but suddenly on his side of the road, there was a motorcycle coming towards him. The highway system in the United States was very developed. Of course, as the oldest main city in the United States, the roads here were a little narrower than the roads in other places. However, no matter how narrow it was, there were still 4 lanes in both directions. Now this guy was riding straight in the wrong direction. Jiang Hai knew that something was wrong even if he was stupid. However, he didn't think too much about it. He thought that this guy, if he wasn't drunk, might be a scammer? There are also scammers in the United States? Looking at the motorcycle in front of him, Jiang Hai laughed self-deprecatingly. He took the initiative to flash the high beam and then prepared to change lanes. However, at this moment, the motorcycle in front of him suddenly fell down. The person on the motorcycle instantly fell to the ground, and the motorcycle under him quickly went straight to the front bumper of Jiang Hai's car. Chapter 196. Bang! With a loud noise, the motorcycle that had already flown over sideways did not give Jiang Hai any chance to react at all. It had already hit the front bumper of Jiang Hai's F650. The huge impact made Jiang Hai's car shake. The airbag on the main steering wheel also popped out immediately. Bang! The airbag popped out and also shook Jiang Hai's head. There was even a ringing sound in his ears. What the hell, what's going on? Sometimes, it was not necessarily a good thing that the airbag was too sensitive. The airbag was not only hot when it popped out, but the impact was also very strong. If it was an ordinary old person or child, it would even be life-threatening. If it was an adult woman, she would also be injured. Even if it was a man, the probability of being knocked out and having a concussion was also quite high. In other words, Jiang Hai's physical fitness was ridiculously strong. That was why he didn't suffer any injuries. But he also felt that his vision was blurry, and there was a constant ringing sound in his ears. It instantly made his mind a little confused. Who the F***CK? After lying on the steering wheel for a while, and then knocking on his head, Jiang Hai got rid of the dizzy feeling and moved a little further away. Then, he vaguely saw the motionless person lying on the ground in the distance. He was also a little confused. What's going on? Are all the scammers in the US so awesome? Are they not afraid of death? Rubbing his temples, Jiang Hai was very sure that he did not hit this person. But at this time, the motorcycle was in pieces in front of his bumper. He did not know if there was a surveillance video in this area, but fortunately, there was a driving recorder in his car. He was not afraid that it was a scammer. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai gradually sorted out the thoughts in his mind, then he took out his phone and called the police. After confirming the location, Jiang Hai slowly opened the door and walked toward the person in the distance. Since he had already called the police and confirmed that the dashcam was on, Jiang Hai wasn't afraid anymore. The reason why Jiang Hai got out of the car now was because he was also quite afraid that something had happened to that person. Although according to the laws of the United States, even if this person died, it had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. The only thing he needed to confirm now was the situation of this person. If he was really dead, then his car repair fees could only be insured. If he was still alive, then this person would be responsible for repairing his car. When his feet landed on the ground, Jiang Hai felt that his feet were still a little weak. It was clear that the airbag had given him a heavy blow. Jiang Hai walked to the front of the man. Seeing the man's undulating chest, Jiang Hai let out a sigh of relief. It's good that he's not dead. Jiang Hai then kicked the man's body casually. Hey, wake up. Don't sleep anymore. You hit my car. How are we going to settle this? Looking at the man lying on the ground, Jiang Hai grumpily said while rubbing his temples. Hey. At this moment, the man who was motionless in front of Jiang Hai suddenly rolled forward. A switchblade had been pulled out of his sleeve and stabbed toward Jiang Hai's thigh. Fortunately, Jiang Hai's car lights were always on. When the man's switchblade flashed, Jiang Hai's eyes had already caught a glimpse of the reflection. He subconsciously stepped back. This step allowed his body to leave the blade of the switchblade, but his pants were cut open. A lot of duck feathers flew out in an instant. *CK, he's serious. Seeing that his pants were broken, Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but widen. Looking at the switchblade coming at him again, Jiang Hai cursed loudly. He didn't retreat but moved forward. He had learned this trick from Bale before. His legs clamped in the air and instantly went under the man's arm holding the switchblade. He clamped the man's arm and head, and at the same time he grabbed the man's hand with both hands and used a cross hold in an instant. With Jiang Hai's shout, the switchblade in the man's hand was twisted to the side by Jiang Hai in an instant. The switchblade had to be released and fell on the road in the distance. The man was still hammering Jiang Hai's leg that was holding his head. "Speak, who asked you to come here? You animal, how dare you sneak attack me?" However, this man's slap was nothing to Jiang Hai. He still forcefully twisted this guy's hand and shouted at him. Come on. But this guy was also a tough guy. His hand was almost twisted into a fried dough twist, but he still didn't say a word. *CK. Seeing that this tough guy was ready to die, Jiang Hai cursed secretly. Since he was willing to die, then he was willing to bury him. Just as Jiang Hai was about to break his hand, suddenly there was the sound of an engine from a distance. Then, in Jiang Hai's line of sight, a dozen motorcycles and 2 cars rushed over from his side of the road. *CK, there are reinforcements. Seeing these people rushing over, Jiang Hai was also shocked. Although he was very good at fighting, there were at least 30 or 40 people in these motorcycles and 2 cars. And from the lights in the distance, these people seemed to have guns in their hands. Jiang Hai didn't know if they had guns, but looking at it, if he fought with 30 or 40 people with guns, it seemed that he couldn't beat them. Knowing that he couldn't beat them, he still fought here. If there was a mission, then he was a hero. If there was no mission, then he was a fool. Although Jiang Hai wasn't smart, he wasn't stupid, so he let go of this guy's hand at the first moment, turned around and ran. However, before he ran away, he deliberately gave this guy a kick. It could be seen that this guy was in cahoots with these people. Quickly climbing into the car, Jiang Hai wanted to start the engine and run toward Winthrop. If it really didn't work, then he could just rush over. Although his F-650 wasn't an armored car, it wasn't a problem for it to send a motorcycle flying. But the problem now was that this F-650 was too good. It had an automatic braking function. If the car was hit, it would be very difficult to start again. This was because he was afraid that after the car was hit by the airbag, the owner would become delirious and cause a second injury. This was originally a good idea, but in Jiang Hai's mind, it became the worst design. Jiang Hai had no choice but to lock the car door and then take his phone to call the police. Surround him. We don't have much time. Pull him out. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was sitting in the driver's seat, a voice came from the radio of these motorcycles. Hearing this voice, the people on the motorcycles also rushed over. When they passed by Jiang Hai's car, the baseball bats, water pipes, and steel bars immediately smashed this monster. Bang 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 bang. With a series of bangs, the car's headlights and mirrors were all smashed away. There were also many holes in the car's door, but they were mainly focused on the glass. Although it was shattered into countless pieces, it did not explode. They still isolated Jiang Hai from these people. At this time, Jiang Hai had to admit that when he bought this F-650, he had a lot of foresight. If it was an ordinary car, it would probably have been destroyed. But at the same time, Jiang Hai also felt that this car's protective ability didn't seem to be very good. After he sold the gold coins, he would see if he could change to another car. Now he wanted to change, but he had no money. Jiang Hai still had the mind to think at this time. His mentality was really good. Bang 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 bang. Seeing that they couldn't break the glass, the people here became even more presumptuous. They swung their weapons and smashed Jiang Hai's car. Jiang Hai was sitting in the car. Since these people couldn't destroy his car, Jiang Hai also looked at these people. Although he didn't know who these people were, they dared to provoke him, so this matter wasn't over. Bastard. Looking at Jiang Hai's F-650 that can't be broken in a short time, a man sitting in the back seat of the car said with a gloomy face. At this time, his mobile phone also rang. Looking at the message on it, he couldn't help but curl his lips. He picked up the walkie-talkie and issued a new order to his subordinates. Let's go. Retreat. As soon as the low male voice fell, the group of hoodlums who were still surrounding Jiang Hai and smashing his car also got into their own cars and sped away. Even the person who was originally lying there was rescued by them at the first moment. Just as Jiang Hai was puzzled by these people coming and going like the wind, a siren rang. The Winthrop County Police Department only had a total of 8 police cars. Jiang Hai, a big taxpayer, called the police, so 6 police cars came instantly and drove over from afar. 4 of them went to chase after those people, and 2 stopped next to Jiang Hai's F-650. "Mr. Jiang, I'm Winthrop's police chief, Murray Smith. Mr. Jiang, are you okay?" As the door of the police car opened, an old policeman came down from the front passenger seat and came to the side of Jiang Hai's car. Jiang Hai remembered this old man. He was the Winthrop's police chief. When Jiang Hai wanted to sue the Winthrop Police Department, it was this police chief who came to his house to beg for mercy. In the end, he agreed to let them go. He didn't expect his kindness to be repaid. Generally speaking, arriving within 5 minutes after calling the police was considered very timely. However, after Jiang Hai called the police, these people had already arrived 2 minutes later. If these people also arrived within 5 minutes as mentioned above, then Jiang Hai really didn't know if his glass could hold up. Thinking of how those people attacked, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shiver. This was troublesome. Chapter 197. Boss, are you okay? A burst of messy footsteps came from outside the Winthrop police station. Then Robbins and others rushed in anxiously and asked Jiang Hai, who was still sitting at the desk over there and talking to Murray Smith, for fear that something happened to their boss. "It's okay, the car was smashed, it will probably take a lot of time to repair it." Hearing Robbins' words, Jiang Hai smiled and nodded. Looking at Robbins and others in front of him, he was relieved. "Then I'll go back first. When you have time, Director Smith, remember to come to my place as a guest. This time I owe you a favor. When the time comes, we'll go together. There will be enough premium grade A beef, but the taste may be a little worse, haha." Motioning to Robbins and others to wait for a while, Jiang Hai turned his head and said to Murray Smith with a smile, Sure, we will contact the police in Boston as soon as possible to see if there are any clues, but you know the effect is estimated to not be too great." Standing up and shaking hands with Jiang Hai, Murray Smith said helplessly, "Do your best." Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai also said seriously, then followed Robbins and others out of the police station. Sitting straight in the back seat of an F-750, Jiang Hai's whole body withered. "Boss, are you all right? Who are those people who attacked you?" Seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, Robbins Garcia, who got in the car at this time, also hurriedly asked. As the person who has followed Jiang Hai for the longest time, no one likes his current job more than him. The income is quite good, the boss is good, and it's what he likes to do. The most beautiful thing in the world is happening around him. If anyone wants to take back this beautiful life, he will really fight with those people. There's no news. According to the news from Boston, many of the cameras at the intersection have been destroyed in the past 2 days. These people should be a group of habitual criminals. They're very sophisticated. I don't think there's any news. However, this time it's not like we didn't gain anything. Recently, Director Smith has decided to increase the number of police cars patrolling near our manor from 1 to 3 24 hours a day. This can be considered as protecting our manor. By the way, all of you have come out and guarded the manor properly? There won't be any problems in the manor. Bell has already taken his baby to the roof. Edward, Philip, Tommy Charles and Harriman Fell stayed there. I also released your little Huang and Xiaobai. If they dare to come again, they won't be able to go back. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robin said to Jiang Hai bitterly while driving. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was also relieved. With such a strong defense force, unless the other party sends a tank, it's impossible to break in. But if the other party really has a tank, then Jiang Hai would have run away long ago. To put it bluntly, the people who are looking for trouble with him are nothing more than some punks. It's good to have some light weapons, heavy weapons, don't even think about it. Is being a police officer in the United States really useless? But boss, do you really not know who did it? Robbins couldn't help but ask as he looked at the worried Jiang Hai from the rearview mirror. It's good that I know who it is. Hearing Robbins' words, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes at him, then he couldn't help rubbing his eyebrows and began to think. Has he made any enemies since he came to the United States? From the very beginning he started to think about it. The first enemy he made was because of the Doolady incident, but those bad boys were sent to the police station by him, and the families of these people were basically from the town. Even if they hate him, they definitely wouldn't dare to hire a hitman to kill him, and at the same time they wouldn't have waited so long. After that, the one who has a grudge with him is Justin Bieber, but this guy is a Canadian. And he has been in Canada for a long time, so it's impossible for him to hire a hitman to do such a thing in the United States. If this matter was exposed, then it would not be a problem of not letting him into the United States, but his future career would be over. If it was not these two groups of people, then it could only be those people who came to the fishery to steal fish when he was not there. If it was really these guys just because they failed to steal the fish, then they wanted to enter his home and were bitten, and they dared to blatantly retaliate against him, then Jiang Hai has to think about it carefully. It's not about quitting here but about how to attack these people. This is the most important thing. Narrowing his eyes, Jiang Hai kept thinking about these people. Unknowingly they returned to the manor. This time there were a lot of people on Jiang Hai's side, and the police were paying attention to Jiang Hai's movements. Naturally, no one dared to come and find trouble with him, so he returned home safely. When the car stopped, Jiang Hai's two dogs also quickly ran to the side of the car to welcome their owner back. Jiang Hai got out of the car, rubbed the heads of the two dogs and prepared to enter the house. However, when he touched his phone he found that his phone had fallen into the car. Then he opened the car door again and took out the phone. Jiang Hai saw that there was a text message on the phone, a text message in Chinese. "Old Jiang, I'm on the plane. Remember to come and pick me up." As soon as he saw this message, Jiang Hai immediately looked at the calendar. Sure enough, today was already the 10th day of the new year. Fu Yuan also got on the plane and was about to fly over. Jiang Hai looked at the time of the text message. It was sent 2 hours ago, which meant that there were about 11 hours before he arrived in New York. It was still enough, but now the situation of the manor, how could I forget him? AI, since I'm already here, I can't just go back directly? Come on. Originally, Jiang Hai hoped that his friends could come over to play with him and stay with him here for a few days. But this did not mean that he had to risk their safety, especially when the manor was not very peaceful these days. Scratching his head, Jiang Hai estimated that these people did not succeed tonight, so they probably would not make a move in the next few days. Thinking of this, he was also relieved. After returning to the villa, Jiang Hai also let the others rest. Daliana and Marian were not woken up. Rabinsi still had a sense of propriety when he did things. After all, Jiang Hai was fine. If everyone knew about it, he didn't know what would happen to others. If Daliana and Marian wanted to go with them to find Jiang Hai, it would be troublesome if something happened on the way. At least it was safe in the manor. After glancing at the two sisters, Jiang Hai returned to his room and lay down on his bed. Not long after, he fell into a deep sleep. He was not a person who particularly liked to use his brain. Today the amount of brain use had obviously exceeded his expectations. Plus he was hit by the airbag, which was quite unbearable. It seems that I have to get a better car in the future. With this thought in mind, Jiang Hai slowly fell asleep. After sleeping for 6 hours, although Jiang Hai was reluctant to get up, he forced himself to get out of bed. After preparing breakfast for the two sisters and cleaning up, he went to find Maren Rupert and Edouard Anderson. The three of them could be regarded as drivers on the road. At the same time, because the airport in the manor was almost repaired, even if the heavy plane could not take off, at least the helicopter would not be a problem. Jiang Hai did not want his sailors to encounter any danger at sea, so it was necessary to get the helicopter back in advance. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, the two also got up early. After a simple wash, the three of them drove a Ford F-750 to the New York airport in the distance. After all, it was not their first time driving, so the car was always fast on the road. In less than 3 hours, Jiang Hai and the others had arrived at the parking lot outside JFK Airport. Less than 10 minutes after they parked the car, Jiang Hai's phone had already rung. As soon as he picked up, Fu Yuan's representative voice sounded from the phone. "Hey, I'm here, where are you?" "I'm in the parking lot, come out. I'll pick you up at the door." Jiang Hai rubbed his ears, which were a little muffled, and said to Ai Dehua and Marin, then got out of the car. In a few steps, Jiang Hai had already arrived at the exit. When he stood here for a while, he saw Fu Yuan walking out while licking his lips and looking around. Although Fu Yuan also passed CET4, to be honest, with the exam-oriented education in China, even though he passed CET4, he had less than 10 chances to speak English. Especially now, there was a group of foreigners around him, speaking very thick American Northeastern English, which made him feel extremely insecure. At the same time, he also felt very unconfident. If it wasn't for the fact that this was the only way out of the airport, he was even afraid that he would get lost. When he walked out, Jiang Hai recognized him at a glance. He stepped forward and slapped him on the shoulder. "Look at you, how are you? The flight must be very tiring." Looking at Fu Yuan in front of him, seeing his friend in a foreign country, to be honest, Jiang Hai was a little surprised. "Cough, do you want to slap me to death, dog? I'm okay, I'm just tired. I slept on the plane, but my neck is a little sore." After being slapped by Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan couldn't help but glare at him, then he continued to look around carefully. Okay, stop looking, let's go quickly, there are still more than 3 hours to go back, and we have to go to the place where we bought the plane first to pick it up. Looking at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai took his bag and walked forward. Chapter 198. Wow, old Jiang, it seems that you are really rich. Planes, 2 planes. Standing in the square of this aviation city and looking at the 2 planes that Jiang Hai is negotiating, Fu Yuan's eyes have been shining. On these 2 planes, he touched left and right and his eyes were about to spurt blood. Hey, can I take this thing back in a while? Although your car is also very good, I still want to take a plane, a private plane. After taking a few photos with the plane, Fu Yuan said with a serious face. This plane hasn't been adjusted yet. I can't let you take it. This helicopter can't be used either. You have to be honest and accompany me in the car. To be honest, Jiang Hai also wants to fly a helicopter back, but the problem is that he doesn't know how to fly it. And when the helicopter is brought back, the first flight naturally needs to be driven by the other party's crew. If something happens, he will be the first to die. As for the person who will sit with him, it is Marin Rupert. When he gets on the plane, he can better observe the plane and it will be easier for him to drive it in the future. So Jiang Hai directly cut off Fu Yuan's telepathic image. After receiving the helicopter, he watched Marin Rupert and the other party's crew take off, and then Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson left with the reluctant Fu Yuan. I say, this is New York. You don't take me to play here. I only have 10 days of vacation. Lying in the co-pilot's seat, Fu Yuan looked at the street scene of New York in the United States outside the window and couldn't help but say with some dissatisfaction. Jiang Hai is too shameless. He won't even take him to play in New York. You came at the wrong time. Recently, the manor may have been targeted. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if I accompany you to play here for a few days. But for our safety, it's better to go back to the manor first. And most importantly, I'm not familiar with this place. I'll take you here to play in a few days when there is nothing to do. Hearing his friend's words, Jiang Hai also said with a little apology. What's wrong? Who did you provoke? Don't tell me it's the American Grey Gang. I've seen it on TV. Those Grey Gangs kill people without batting an eyelid. As soon as he heard Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan immediately turned his head and asked Jiang Hai with a face full of interest. Well, Jiang Hai and his buddies in general, none of them had a normal brain. When other people heard that they had provoked the Grey Society, they would be a little worried, but Fu Yuan seemed to be more excited than worried. Yes, killing without batting an eyelid. Ehe, do you think you're watching a movie? America is also a legal society, okay? Rolling his eyes at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes even he didn't know what this guy was thinking. Fine. You said you wouldn't let me take a plane, you wouldn't let me play in New York, and you even dragged me into your war with the Grey Gang. I don't have any complaints, but there's only one thing. Did you help me find a girl? While counting his fingers, Fu Yuan muttered in a low voice. Of course, his so-called muttering was clearly heard by Jiang Hai. Girl? When he heard Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai almost hit his head on the steering wheel. What the hell is this? Yeah, you can't drag me into your incident and not give me any benefits. I'm still a virgin. Fu Yuan looked at Jiang Hai with a serious expression on his face. You're an animal. You think I don't know? You didn't have a girlfriend in university? Don't go to the little pink lamp below your house. How dare you? While driving, Jiang Hai still freed one of his hands and gave Fu Yuan the middle finger with a look of disdain. It said that men have 4 irons. They went through the window together, went to the countryside together, carried guns together, and did that together. Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan were classmates, that was for sure. They didn't go to the countryside and they didn't go to the army. However, they did do that together. The world is as black as the crows. Who doesn't know each other's background? If you pretend to be innocent, you will be struck by thunder. Ahem, I went to save women. Usually, after I went in, I would chat with them and tell them that it's not good to do that. As for my previous girlfriends, I'm not sure if I'll become their husband. If I did that with them, it's not fair to them. F***ck, just say that you're not prepared. Under Jiang Hai's gaze, after Fu Yuan talked for a long time, he guessed that he couldn't make up any more stories. He could only break the pot. Now I'll tell you. There are 10 girls in my manor who don't have an owner. 2 of them are my daughters and the other 8 are my employees. Don't you have any crooked thoughts? Looking at Fu Yuan's shameless face, Jiang Hai's eyebrows couldn't help but raise. F***ck10. Their bodies are not bad. The next time I come, will I come to collect your corpse and your daughters? When he heard Jiang Hai's words, the wretched expression on Fu Yuan's face became even more outrageous. Resisting the urge to punch him out, Jiang Hai gritted his teeth and said to him, "In the future, you should watch less movies with 2 or 3 people. Especially the romantic idol dramas produced by Japan. It's really not good for you. I know it hurts the kidneys. But your brother's kidneys are indestructible." Patting Jiang Hai's shoulder, Fu Yuan interrupted him and said proudly. At the same time he patted his back. "Whether it hurts your kidneys or not, I'm not interested to know. It's just waste paper. Now most of the paper used is wood. If you waste paper there will be fewer and fewer trees. The world will slowly warm up. At that time, you will be the real culprit of the destruction of mankind." Casually waving his hand, Jiang Hai looked at Fu Yuan and said lightly, "Whether his kidneys were good or not, what did it have to do with him? *CK, your hat is getting better and better." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan also laughed. The conversation between the two people was all joking and couldn't be taken seriously, but Ai de Hua, who was sitting in the back row, was a little depressed. Because these two people were talking in Chinese, he couldn't understand. After talking for a long time, he had nothing to do except to be in a daze at the back. But fortunately, this section of the road was not particularly difficult to drive. Not long after, everyone arrived in Boston. After another half an hour, everyone returned to Jiang Hai's manor. When Jiang Hai's car stopped in front of the villa, the 2 big dogs had already appeared beside the car, looking at the people in the car with longing. When Fu Yuan saw the 2 dogs, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Fu Yuan is also a dog lover. He used to raise dogs, but he raised them for more than 10 years. In the end, the dog died and he was very sad. Since then he hadn't raised them, but now that he saw Jiang Hai's dogs, he was still very interested. But when he got down from the passenger seat, besides being interested, he was also a little afraid. The F-750 was very tall, especially on the passenger side. When he looked at the 2 dogs in the car, although they were big, they weren't particularly big. They were about the same size as the ones he used to raise. But when he got down he realized that something was wrong. The 2 dogs were lying on the ground, and their heads were about to reach his chest. The Caucasian Mastiff and Green Wolf Mastiff were originally large dogs. Coupled with the stimulation of Jiang Hai's blood, they had undergone a second growth spurt. After these days of improvement in good food and drink, the size of these 2 dogs had changed once again. Now the Green Wolf Mastiff was more than 1.9 meters tall when it stood up, and the Caucasus had grown to more than 2 meters. When it stood up, it was already taller than Jiang Hai by a head, not to mention Fu Yuan, who was only 1.7 meters tall. When the 2 dogs came over, their heads were about to reach his chest. When he saw these 2 huge beasts, he couldn't help but take a step back subconsciously. He looked at these 2 fellows with some hesitation. One was black and the other was green. They looked really scary. "Okay, this is my friend. He'll be staying here for a few days. Don't bully him. Okay, go back." Fortunately at this time, Jiang Hai also jumped down from the back seat, patted the 2 dogs' heads and casually instructed them. When they heard Jiang Hai's words, the 2 big dogs curiously went forward and sniffed Fu Yuan, then left eagerly. Looking at the backs of the 2 dogs leaving, Fu Yuan couldn't help but lick his lips. "Hey, I say, this dog of yours, any one of them will do. Remember to leave one for me when you give birth." Pointing at Xiao Huang and Xiao Bai, Fu Yuan's eyes lit up. He really cared about these 2 dogs. I don't have the intention to pair them up yet. But even if I do, how are you going to take them back?" Scratching his head, Jiang Hai asked curiously. When he heard Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan glanced at him. "I'd rather spend money on quarantine. These dogs are really beautiful." Could be seen that Fu Yuan was really a dog lover. Such a dog was really worth a lot in China. Of course, if a person really liked dogs, they would not associate dogs with money. Compared to Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai was much more rational. He wasn't a dog fan. He also ate dog meat, and he wouldn't refuse something as delicious as dog meat. He raised dogs to relieve boredom and to guard the house. If he were to raise them as pets, he wouldn't pick these 2 dogs that weren't cute at all. Compared to these 2 guys, Dai Teeth and Chirp, Chirp was still a baby, so they were more like pets. No matter how he looked at it, these 2 guys didn't match well with pets. After bidding farewell to Edward Anderson, Jiang Hai took Fu Yuan back to his villa. While walking, he also talked about their itinerary for the next few days. They would rest for the day and have a steak dinner in the evening. There was also a lobster and a few abalones in the freezer, which was enough for him to enjoy. Then they would go horseback riding tomorrow, fishing on a boat the day after that, and playing with guns the day after that. In any case, in Jiang Hai's manner, he was a relatively idle person. Playing with his friends wasn't a big deal. Chapter 199. Horseback riding, fishing, playing with guns. Although I am very interested, there are still no girls. Listening to Jiang Hai's arrangements for the next few days, Fu Yuan walked and said with a smile. Of course his words can't be serious. Stop talking nonsense, endure it, wait until you go back and find your little pink lamp to solve it. Glancing at him contemptuously, Jiang Hai then said. Then he opened the door of the villa and let Fu Yuan in. But as soon as the two came in, they saw Daliana and Marian sitting in the living room watching TV. The two girls also knew that there would be guests today, so they got up early and cleaned up the house. Although Jiang Hai's villa was not spotless, it was still very clean and tidy. The two girls also changed into decent clothes. They wore a pure white chiffon shirt with an autumn shirt underneath, which outlined their well-developed figure. Jiang Hai's face was very pale. Jiang Hai's face was pale, but he didn't know what to say. They were wearing denim shorts, but it was only about an inch above the knee. It was not hot pants. Jiang Hai could not let them wear that. They were wearing knee-length black stockings, and their long hair was straight and draped behind their heads. Sitting there they were indeed very beautiful. They were two perfect big lolas. Although it is still ice and snow outside, Jiang Hai's home is very warm, so it doesn't matter if they dress like this. After seeing the arrival of Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan, the two girls jumped off the sofa and ran over with a sweet smile on their faces. What's the situation? Looking at the two big girls running over, Fu Yuan, who had been clamoring for girls, was scared when he saw the girls this time. He looked at Jiang Hai with a puzzled face and asked. These are my two daughters, this is Daliana, this is Marian. Shrugging, looking at Fu Yuan's embarrassing appearance, Jiang Hai casually put on slippers, then threw Fu Yuan's bag on the sofa next to him, then hugged the two girls and said proudly. Although when Jiang Hai took in these two girls he was a bit of a saint, then he especially despised himself and regretted it, but then he thought about it later. Now that sunbathing is so popular, then he can also do it occasionally. Fu Yuan is the first person who saw him sunbathing, and now it seems that the effect is still very good. Looking at the two girls with big curious eyes staring at him, Fu Yuan felt that his throat was dry all of a sudden. He opened his mouth and spoke to the two girls in his strange spoken language that he almost only spoke in English class. Although some of the pronunciation and grammar may be a bit strange, and the two girls can't quite understand, at least they understand what he means. So the two girls smiled sweetly and made some gestures to him, meaning that they are also very happy to see him. What does this mean? Looking at the two girls, Fu Yuan asked with some confusion. They can't speak but they can listen. This is sign language, which means that they are also very happy to see you. After all, Jiang Hai has been in contact with these two girls for so long, some of the less complicated sign language can also be seen by him. Oh, so that's how it is. What a pity. Such beautiful little girls. TSK, by the way, here are 2 red envelopes. Is Chinese New Year, good luck, $500 each. It's not much. You didn't tell me about these 2 little girls. I only know that you adopted 2 children. Buy whatever the children want to eat. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan sighed. 2 such beautiful girls can't speak. This may be God's punishment for them being too beautiful. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered that he also prepared red packets. He casually took out 2 red packets from his pocket. While talking, he stuffed the money into the hands of the 2 girls. This scared the 2 girls. While pushing their hands, they retreated to Jiang Hai's side and looked at this wretched uncle with vigilance. F***ck stop. Seeing that Fu Yuan was about to chase after them, Jiang Hai had no choice but to ask him to stop. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he explained that in the United States, there was no such thing as giving money. Even if it was a gift, it wasn't directly given money. Most of the time it was something valuable. If the person didn't want it, then they could sell it. But no one gives money directly. There is no red packet during Chinese New Year, such as Christmas. Families will give each other gifts, but no one will give money. Therefore, Westerners are very hypocritical. While shouting about capitalism and making money all over the world, they avoid people who come to give money. On the other hand, Wuxia's words are said to worship money. The difference between the East and the West is really big. But I didn't bring a gift. You just said that I should have bought it when I was in New York and Boston. Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, Fu Yuan was a little dumbfounded. $1,000 is not a small amount for him. This is more than 6,000 yuan. His year-end bonus is in this. It is not a lot. From this, it can be seen that he really thinks highly of Jiang Hai. If it is in China, generally speaking, only the children of very close relatives will give 500 yuan. But in the United States, it is naturally impossible to give money, so he gritted his teeth and exchanged it for $3,000 in China. This is almost 20,000 yuan. 1,000 of it is going to be given to Jiang Hai's 2 children as red packet money. But he didn't expect that he can't give it to them in the United States. Okay, it's enough as long as you understand. Jiang Hai smiled. You can't say in New York that you are buying gifts for my children, right? That is too shameless. Moreover, Jiang Hai didn't care about these things. How can I do that? Alright, I still have this. Although it is not worth much, I will give it to you. No matter what, it is a gift I brought from China. Just as Fu Yuan was scratching his head anxiously, he suddenly remembered something. After opening his backpack, Jiang Hai took out 2 small bags from it. Jiang Hai looked inside and found that it turned out to be 2 commemorative medals of the great ancestor. This thing was extremely enviable in this special period. But now, in the imperial capital, it was more of a souvenir. For example, the commemorative medallions of Taizu and the commemorative medallions of the 10 founding generals were sold in the streets of the imperial capital, and the price was not considered expensive. Of course, the commemorative medals of that special period are expensive. But now, these are all imitation medals, so they are not expensive. After Delina and Marion took the commemorative medals from Fu Yuan, they looked at them carefully. Compared to the red packet, they are obviously more interested in this thing, so they smiled and thanked Fu Yuan, then went upstairs to play. So I am envious of your life. Looking at the backs of the 2 little girls leaving, Fu Yuan began to be wretched again. You can't keep anything serious in your head. Let's go upstairs and arrange a place for you to stay. After patting Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai took him upstairs and found an empty room for him to stay. This room is facing the same direction as Jiang Hai's room, but Jiang Hai's room is facing both sides. It can see the grassland and the beach, but Fu Yuan's room is a sea view room. After entering the room and hanging up his backpack, he, who was still a little sleepy in the car, was instantly energized. He picked up his phone and stood in front of the window taking pictures continuously. He looked at the beach in the distance, the lawn under the villa and the cows in the distance, and the waves in the blue ocean that rolled up from time to time. He was clearly more excited. Not only did he take pictures of the scenery, but he also took a few selfies. After the selfies were over, he insisted on taking pictures with Jiang Hai. When did you have this hobby? After a little reluctantly accompanied this silly guy to pose for some pictures, Jiang Hai glanced at this guy's profile. This guy really joined a lot of groups. There was his work group, Jiang Hai's classmate group. Jiang Hai didn't join this group. There was also his elementary school classmate group, high school classmate group, university group, family group. The mobile phone was not big and there were more than 10 groups. At this time he was sending these photos in these groups, including the photo with Jiang Hai. It's always been like this. I am the most talkative person. Don't you usually see my moments? While sending these things, Fu Yuan said excitedly. It was obvious that he had forgotten about sleeping. Oh, I blocked it. Who told you to always send some inexplicable things? Looking at Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai couldn't help but chuckle and said calmly. Fu Yuan really liked to send some inexplicable things. For example, he would send his breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even instant noodles every day. He would also often forward some inexplicable jokes and the like. Jiang Hai didn't have much energy to look at this. Jiang Hai was a little different from the young people nowadays. He didn't like to play with mobile phones very much. If he played, he would just play games. He wouldn't do things like browsing Weibo or Moments. Okay, you should take a rest, but don't sleep. This is called jet lag. Otherwise, you won't be able to sleep at night. When you wake up later, I will treat you to a big meal. Looking at Fu Yuan in front of him, Jiang Hai said and helped him close the door. As for whether he would listen to Jiang Hai, that was not something Jiang Hai needed to consider. In the blink of an eye, it was already past 4 o'clock. Jiang Hai knocked on Fu Yuan's door and found that this guy's eyes were red like a rabbit's. This was not crying, but this guy's eyes were bloodshot. It could be seen that he had been in a state of excitement just now. What's wrong with you? Did you just secretly touch her? Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai said with some doubts. Damn, do you really think I'm that perverted? After I just sent those photos, my goddess replied to me. Chapter 200. Yujia. As soon as he heard Fu Yuan say the word goddess, Jiang Hai's first impression was the giant beast sitting quietly over there when they attended the class reunion. Speaking of which, Fu Yuan's heavy taste was also recognized by everyone. Well, she asked me what I was doing, where I was, and so on. It seems that the goddess still cares about me. Looking at Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan's eyes began to drift. If it weren't for the fact that he was in the United States now, he might have already drifted to find his goddess. Oh, then do you want dinner or the goddess? Looking at Fu Yuan's appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. Dinner. Without any hesitation, Fu Yuan recovered his consciousness in an instant and said to Jiang Hai with a serious face, "Why didn't you say goddess this time?" Seeing that Fu Yuan had made a choice, Jiang Hai walked downstairs. It's said that when one is full, one will think about that. I'm still hungry. How can I have the leisure and energy to do that? By the way, what are we eating tonight? With a casual smile, Fu Yuan followed Jiang Hai downstairs. You can eat whatever you want. With Fu Yuan, Jiang Hai walked to the front of his cold storage and said with a mysterious face, "Bullsh *T, I want to eat abalone." Looking at Jiang Hai with contempt, Fu Yuan said with a cold face, "Yes, the best two-headed abalone." Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai opened the door and pointed to a pool next to him. Following Fu Yuan's gaze, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Sure enough, he saw a pile of fist-sized abalones crawling around in the pool. There were also mini sea cucumbers in the pool. They were living sea cucumbers that were slowly wriggling under the water. Gulp, I also want to eat lobster. Looking at the things in the pool, Fu Yuan said with a serious face. Yes, will such a big one do? Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai had already walked into the cold storage. He grabbed a huge lobster in front of a table. Looking at this lobster that was at least 3 times bigger than the one that Jiang Hai had seen at the class reunion, Fu Yuan didn't know what to say. He immediately took out his mobile phone and began to take photos. Wow, this lobster, wow, these pincers, wow, this length, damn, it's a shrimp king. While taking photos, Fu Yuan's mouth didn't stop moving. What kind of shrimp king is this? There are many bigger ones in the sea. The ones we ate yesterday were bigger than this. Jiang Hai casually threw the lobster into his pocket. He was going to clean it up later. *CK, you guys eat this stuff every day? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was confused. Not every day. I can't get tired of eating it every day. When I want to eat it, I will go to the sea to catch a few. It's just a matter of a few minutes. Originally, when Jiang Hai said the first half of the sentence, he was relieved. If he ate these things every day, it would be too wasteful. But later, Jiang Hai told him that he was thinking too much. He didn't eat it every day because he would get tired of it. Looking at Jiang Hai's face that was corrupted by capitalism, Fu Yuan said bitterly. Then he quickly ordered, *CK, corrupt, shameless, evil capitalist society. People like you should hang a sign to criticize you. I want to eat this lobster and this abalone and this sea cucumber. Okay, these were originally prepared for you. In fact, the main dish is still beef. After listening to Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai chuckled and walked to the compartment in the cold storage. As he opened it, dozens of processed beef were hanging in this space. The meat these years were all special grade A frost snow beef, but they were all frozen. Jiang Hai's manor now had a total of more than 20 people, nearly 30 people. Even if half of them were women, women still needed to eat. As a member of the manor, eating beef was inevitable. On average, each person consumed 2 pounds of beef every day. That was more than 50 pounds a day. An Angus bull weighed about 700 kilograms after this winter's fattening. The highest weight had reached 750 kilograms, which was about 1,500 pounds. The slaughter rate was 65%, which meant that nearly 1,000 pounds of meat could be produced. If all of this beef was eaten, one bull could feed the entire manor for 20 days. But because Jiang Hai's bulls were really good, the production rate of special grade A beef was extremely high. The people in the manor weren't willing to eat this meat. They were already very happy to be able to get some special and preferred meat. And these beef were all sent to Jiang Hai. But the problem was that Jiang Hai's bulls had a very high probability of producing special grade A beef. Almost every bull had it, and every bull would produce more than 10% of special grade A beef, which was more than 100 pounds. Sometimes it could even reach 200 pounds. But the problem was that Jiang Hai couldn't eat so much, and the other people in the manor didn't dare to eat it because it was too expensive. So Jiang Hai's special grade A beef was getting more and more. Almost every half a month, he would have more than 100 pounds of beef that had been cleaned up. Jiang Hai couldn't say much to Luo Binci and the others, so he could only put it here first. Although frozen beef was not as delicious as ice, special grade A beef was special grade A. Even if it was raw, it was still delicious. Gulp. Looking at Jiang Hai's pile of beef, Fu Yuan couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Before he had eaten this kind of beef he had only heard of it at most but he had never seen it before. He didn't care much about this kind of beef. But after eating it he knew the difference between this kind of beef and ordinary beef. The beef that Jiang Hai sent back to the country was divided into 10 pounds for each of them, and they had basically eaten it all these days, especially Fu Yuan's family. After the 5th day of the Chinese New Year, his parents came back and brought a group of relatives back, and they ate all the beef in one meal. When they were eating, although Fu Yuan was distressed, he couldn't say anything. After the meal, he told his father that this beef was more than 2,000 yuan per pound. His father almost ate the table when he heard it, although their family was not short of money. But more than 2,000 yuan per pound of beef. Thinking about it, his father and his grandmother also felt distressed. Is this eating beef? This is eating gold bars. But at this time, the gold bars in their eyes were hanging everywhere in Jiang Hai's cold storage. When we go back this time, you have to give me some more of this beef. Looking at the beef in front of him, Fu Yuan's hands trembled. No problem, I'll take as much as I can. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. These are supreme delicacies in the eyes of others, but in Jiang Hai's eyes, it was just some beef, although it was the best beef. Hey, why do you have a chicken here? Forcing himself to look away from the beef, he suddenly saw that in the cold storage, there was a chicken that had been cleaned up, but to call it a chicken, this chicken was too small. What kind of eyes are you looking at? This is not a chicken, this is a wyvern. Picking up the frozen thing on the ground, Jiang Hai said with some pity. Before Christmas he and his men went to the forest. The turkey that was caught there was finished before Christmas, but Jiang Hai didn't eat the wyverns that they caught. Instead he built a nest and raised them in the vegetable garden. Only the wyvern that was killed by little Huang, after cutting off its head, Jiang Hai froze the rest of its body. It's not that he didn't want to eat it, but he didn't know how to cook it. It was like shark's fin. Everyone knew that this was delicious, but who knew how to cook it? Wyvern. I haven't seen this in years. The meat of yours is so tight. Is it wild? Looking at Jiang Hai, the look of surprise on Fu Yuan's face became even more intense. Just like beef, Fu Yuan had actually eaten wyverns before. This was because when he was young his father was a soldier. He was a local soldier in the northeast, and he was considered a soldier's relative. The place where he was a soldier was in a mountainous area. There were wyverns in the mountains, but when he was young there weren't many wyverns left, but the soldiers still caught some to eat. When soldiers cooked in the wild there were only 2 ways to eat, roast or stew. The ingredients were things that could be caught. Most of them were snakes and rabbits. Although they were wild, it wouldn't be delicious if you tried to cook them. Therefore, Fu Yuan had always thought that the flying dragon wasn't delicious. Until one day, a big boss came to his father's army for an inspection. The big boss brought along a chef with him. During a banquet at night, his father took him to have a meal. That was also the first time he ate a real wyvern soup. He also knew what it meant to have dragon meat in the sky and donkey meat in the ground. The freshness and tenderness were things that he would never forget in his life. However, ever since wyverns became a protected animal, he didn't have many opportunities to eat them. However, during that time he learned how to cook wyverns. Initially he thought that he might not have a chance to show off his skills in the future. However, at Jiang Hai's place he could eat anything he wanted. Now it was time for him to show off his skills. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's eyes lit up. If he really knew how to cook wyverns he could learn how to cook them himself. He wouldn't have so many wyverns left and he would be in luck in the future. At that moment the two of them looked at each other and started to pack. First they packed 5 kilograms of the best ribeye. Then they grabbed the big lobster, 10 big abalones, and a few big sea cucumbers before leaving the cold storage. There are a total of 3 ways to cook wyverns. One is to drink soup and the other 2 are to eat meat. Which one do you want to cook? Looking at the wild wyvern in his hand, Fu Yuan's eyes lit up. He looked at Jiang Hai with a serious face and asked, "Eat meat, of course." Jiang Hai didn't like to drink soup. Of course, thick soup was an exception. At the very least there had to be something to chew in the soup. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan hurriedly asked, "Then do you have ginseng here?" "Mushrooms are fine too. I have American ginseng here. It's 10 centimeters long. You can choose from it. I also have good hazel mushrooms and pine mushrooms." "Damn, so many. You even have pine mushrooms. I'm getting more and more envious of you, brother." Chapter 201. Actually, speaking of wyvern soup, it's very magical, but it's not too difficult to make. Looking at Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan began to work. While talking, he explained to Jiang Hai. There were a total of 3 ways to make wyvern soup. The first one was the simplest and also the most primitive way. In the mountains of Xing and Mountain, there was a minority called the Aleutian tribe. When Jiang Hai was young, he learned a children's song. It was sung like this. Tall heels, a layer of black. No, it was the tall Xing'an mountain range, a large forest, and in the forest lived the brave Aleutian people. This was the ethnic group. This ethnic group was also the ancestors of the flying dragon tribe. In the earliest days, this way of eating wyvern birds was their way of eating, which was also called drinking soup. It was divided into 2 ways. One was to cut the wyvern meat into small pieces and throw it into boiling water to cook for about 2 minutes. Then, some wild onions were sprinkled in and it was ready to be drunk. Because the freshest taste had already entered the soup, the meat might not be cooked yet, but the soup was quite delicious. There was another method that was similar to this. That was to hold the wyvern in one hand and use the boiling water in the pot to continuously pour over the wyvern's body. When the wyvern's meat was about 60% cooked, the whole wyvern was thrown into the pot together with the minced green onions. After boiling for about 10 seconds, it was ready to drink. Similarly, the meat wasn't tasty, but the soup was extremely delicious. But there was one thing: this method could not be done with oil. Any bit of oil would destroy the freshness of the wyvern soup. Except for oil, salt, monosodium glutamate, and so on, no other seasonings could be added. Only the taste could be drunk. Therefore, in some people's eyes, the taste was a bit bland and it was not very good. In addition to the wyvern soup, there were 2 other types of soup that could be eaten with meat. One was stewed with mushrooms and the other was stewed with ginseng. The cooking method was basically the same. Remove the internal organs and impurities of the wyvern, put it in boiling water, soak it for a while, take it out, wash it, put it in a pot, and add water. Of course, the best way was to add chicken soup. Then add other ingredients such as ginseng or mushrooms, ginger, spring onions, and cooking wine, boil it, and slowly stew it over a small fire. After stewing for about an hour, take out the wyvern and its accessories, add some salt, MSG, and pepper into the soup, boil it, and pour it into the bowl where the meat was taken out. It wasn't difficult to talk about it, and it wasn't difficult to make it either. However, the difficulty lay in controlling the fire. The reason why the flying dragon soup was famous was because it originated from the Tatar period. At that time, the flying dragons were exclusively for the royal family. Dragon meat in the sky, donkey meat on the ground. Many people had heard of this saying, but not many knew that the dragon meat referred to the wyvern. By the time the commoners had the opportunity to know what dragon meat was, it was already the modern era. Ever since the founding of the dynasty, the flying dragon soup was an indispensable dish in the state banquets. It was also because of this that the flying dragons were taken seriously by the people again. However, it was also because of this that there weren't many flying dragons in the country. This was because there were too many people who wanted to eat them. Because Jiang Hai's ingredients were very complete, Fu Yuan made the flying dragon ginseng pine mushroom soup today. The 2 of them first went to the place where the flying dragons were kept behind the house and caught 5 more flying dragons. This one died a long time ago and was used to make soup by Fu Yuan. It was already in the pot. Tonight they were eating these 5 live flying dragons. They cut their throats, let their blood out, and scalded their feathers. In fact, killing a flying dragon was not much different from killing a chicken. After cleaning up, the soup for the flying dragon was almost ready. Then Fu Yuan started to get busy. After about half an hour, the soup was finally ready. They even used a clay pot to stew it. Jiang Hai used his hand to fan the fragrance floating out of the pot. He clicked his tongue. The smell was really hard to describe. Although it was fragrant, it was not as fragrant as one would imagine. But if it was not fragrant, it was indeed very fragrant. Moreover, it was an indescribable fragrance. It was somewhat like the smell of chicken, but not quite. It was really difficult to distinguish. Next, it's up to you. After closing the lid, Fu Yuan sat in the kitchen and watched Jiang Hai prepare other things. Okay, just watch. After hearing what Fu Yuan said, Jiang Hai didn't stand on ceremony and began to clean up. The things he wanted to make were very simple. It was also something he often made. Baked lobster with cheese, steamed abalone, scallion braised sea cucumber, and 2 types of beef. One was made into steak, and the other was braised beef with red wine. Compared to the flying dragon soup, the taste of these things was more fragrant. He watched Jiang Hai busy there. Over here, Fu Yuan was also holding his phone and taking pictures left and right. Those raw materials were his main focus. He also put these pictures in his group chat. Once he put them in, they were much more shocking than the pictures he took in the house. In an instant, his group chat exploded. Especially when they saw the fist-sized abalone and the huge lobster. His group chat was about to go crazy. F***ck, such a long lobster. Did you hit the lottery? This is unreasonable. That abalone one is enough for me to eat for a meal. You actually want to make 10 of them. Do you have any shame? I despise you to death for showing off. But then again, Brother Yuan, can you bring some back for me to try? XXX, we have lost all our face because of you. We won't accept food given to us. But little Yuan, if you take the initiative to bring some back for us, we can still try it for you. At that time I will tell you where Yujia's address is. Looking at these exploding group chats, Fu Yuan's face would have cracked into a grin if there were ears to cover it. He hadn't shown his face in these group chats for a long time. He had to give himself full marks for bumping into a wall. No matter how busy Jiang Hai was and no matter how annoying Fu Yuan was, the food was gradually cooked. Just as the steak was about to be ready, Daliana and Marian ran in from the other side. When Fu Yuan was resting in the afternoon, the two girls went to Mrs. Philemon's place. Recently they had been very close to Jiang Hai's employees. This was a scene that Jiang Hai was quite willing to see. He wasn't sure if his blood would have an effect on these two girls. But even if it didn't have an effect, letting these two girls get more attention was something worth being happy about. You came at the right time. Go wash your hands and get ready to eat. Looking at the two girls who rushed in, Jiang Hai said. However, the two girls didn't wash their hands immediately. Instead they gestured to Jiang Hai. Seeing the movements of the two girls, Jiang Hai understood that Marin Rupert was back. Hey Fu Yuan, do you want to go see the helicopter? Jiang Hai was also very excited when he heard that Marin Rupert was back. After all, that was his first helicopter. He wanted to go and see it immediately, but when he looked back and saw Fu Yuan, who was still confused, he knew that if he didn't bring this guy along, he would be scolded to death if he found out, so he called him. Sure enough, as soon as he heard Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan jumped up. But after jumping up, he slowly sat back down and looked at the casserole pot on the stove. He was worried about the casserole pot. It's okay, my stove has a leaky automatic shut-off function, let's go. Looking at Fu Yuan's appearance, Jiang Hai also smiled, then he waved to Daliana and Marian and left the villa first. On the other side, Fu Yuan saw that Jiang Hai didn't care, so he gritted his teeth and ran out of the villa. The four of them went out of the villa and got on an F-750. With a roar, they ran to the hangar built by Jiang Hai. Sure enough, after arriving here, a helicopter was parked on the originally empty runway. It was the helicopter that Jiang Hai bought. The huge helicopter was parked there quietly at this time. Only Marin Rupert and the person in charge of maintenance were still talking. Seeing Jiang Hai's car coming, the two stopped talking temporarily. They knew that this was Jiang Hai's car. Boss. Looking at Jiang Hai, who got out of the car, Marin Rupert took the initiative to greet him. After they left New York just now, in order to test the performance of the helicopter, they deliberately went to the sea area around Jiang Hai's manor before returning here. On the way, the two also found a place for Marin Rupert to drive for a while. If there were any problems, he had already felt it in advance. Now is the time to communicate. How about the plane? Can I use it? Patting the giant ladder beside him, Jiang Hai asked with some envy. He also wants to fly it, but the problem is that he doesn't know how to fly it. It seems that learning how to fly a helicopter is something he has to learn in the future. There are no problems with the hardware of the helicopter, just some adjustments. We can finish it in a while and then we can use it to navigate tomorrow. When he heard Jiang Hai's words, Marin Rupert naturally knew his purpose in coming here, so he immediately said. Although he was mainly here as a driver, there were a lot of people who knew how to drive a boat. He was mainly invited by Jiang Hai because he has a pilot license. Now is the time for him to show his ability. Okay, then can we go to sea in this thing tomorrow? Looking at the giant beast in front of him, Jiang Hai also asked excitedly. As soon as he said that, Fu Yuan, who was behind him, looked at Marlon Rupert, Delina, and Marian eagerly. It was obvious that they were also very interested in this plane. Of course, we will fly around tomorrow morning, and then when we fly again in the afternoon, the boss will take the two ladies and this gentleman with him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Marin Rupert also smiled. The boss's wish must be fulfilled. Chapter 202. To tell you the truth, your place is amazing. I don't want to leave anymore. Fu Yuan said to Jiang Hai with a look of envy. After they finished looking at the plane, Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan returned to the villa. Jiang Hai originally wanted to invite Rabinsi and the others over to eat together. After all, it was more lively with more people. However, in the United States, there was no such thing as taking advantage of others. There was no New Year or holiday, and there was no such thing as housewarming. The people in the United States were not in the habit of treating others, not to mention that Jiang Hai was not lying down. In addition, although Fu Yuan was flirtatious, Jiang Hai knew that this kid was not very open when outsiders were around. In summary, Jiang Hai did not ask others to come back for dinner. There were only the four of them eating at home. Of course, this included Goldie, Xiaobai, Dai-Tooth, and Chirp. Fu Yuan liked Goldie and Xiaobai from the bottom of his heart, but these two guys did not survive by pleasing others. Therefore, these two kept a respectful distance from him and left after eating their rations. Dai-Tooth and Chirp were now Delina and Marion's pets, especially Dai-Tooth. He was very fond of these two sisters who often gave him delicious food. Even if it was Jiang Hai's orders, he would sometimes obey in public but disobey in private. After the sisters finished eating, it left. As for Qiuqiu, it was still a young bird and couldn't understand human language. Seeing that its seniors had left, it also left. After there were no outsiders, Fu Yuan was a lot more relaxed. Jiang Hai had a lot of beer here. These were all bought from the Cowboy Song bar in town. The beer at Old Tony's was a bit bitter when he first drank it. However, after drinking it for a long time, he got used to it. The taste was really good, especially when it was chilled. At first, Fu Yuan was a little uncomfortable drinking this beer, but now he completely fell in love with it. If you don't want to leave, then stay a little longer. I have nothing to do here anyway. Jiang Hai shrugged. Although there were many people here to play with him, these people were not his friends after all. They were not equal and could not play with each other. Although the relationship between superiors and subordinates was not as tense as it was in China, Jiang Hai did not hang out with these American people. To be honest, in the entire manor, there was only Belle and Harriman who were about the same age as him. However, Harriman was stubborn. He took Jiang Hai's money for him to work, so he would not hang out with Jiang Hai at all. As for Bale, what should he play? Fight? Boring. Playing with guns? Jiang Hai also lost interest in playing. As for the others, Bale and Jiang Hai did not hang out. Apart from these two, there were only the 8 girls left. However, when you asked Jiang Hai to play with the girls, Jiang Hai felt a little awkward. He was such an awkward person. Hey, I'm just saying. Don't take it seriously. If I'm here, what will my father do? What will my mother do? Don't look at my job. It's because of my father's relationship that I got in. If I say I quit, he will skin me alive. Although he was a little drunk, Fu Yuan did not lose his mind. He could not help but say to Jiang Hai helplessly. After saying that, he took a big gulp of beer and laughed self-deprecatingly. Besides, I can't do anything here. It's not like you don't know how bad my English is. Alright, I'm not joking. Let's continue drinking. Picking up the beer cup in front of him, Fu Yuan and Jiang Hai drank another cup. Both of them drank half a cup in one gulp and then continued to chat. That night they talked a lot. When Fu Yuan was so drunk that he almost crawled under the table, it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. Jiang Hai looked at him. Although he was a little drunk, it was not heavy. He drank the last cup of beer. Jiang Hai grabbed Fu Yuan and went back to his room. As a man, he did not care about whether he was comfortable or not. If he wanted to take off a man's clothes, shoes, or face, he might as well kill him. Throwing him on the bed, Jiang Hai went back to his room to sleep. Time passed by, and the manor's night came quietly. When Jiang Hai woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, on the other side of the ocean in Wuxia, the sky had just turned completely dark. At this time, the nightlife had just begun. Holding up the phone, Qi Li's assistant, a girl wearing glasses, said anxiously, Boss, look, Fu Yuan just updated his WeChat moments. It's all about food. There's also a picture of your husband. Do you want to take a look? At this time, Qi Li had just finished approving the work that needed to be done today. She was leaning on her chair in a daze. When she heard Qi Li's words, she reacted for a moment. Then she took Qi Li's phone and looked at it. The first thing that caught her eye was a huge lobster. It was a picture of what it looked like before and after it was cooked. In addition, there were big abalones, big sea cucumbers, the legendary dragon soup, steak, and so on. Of course, among the food there were selfies of Fu Yuan and Jiang Hai. They really know how to enjoy themselves. Then, looking at Fu Yuan's WeChat moments, Qi Li snorted in disdain. Especially when she saw Jiang Hai's sweet smile in the picture, her handsome long eyebrows raised. Ever since the last unfriendly meeting with Jiang Hai, Qi Li realized that she would often think of Jiang Hai. If in the past she would think of him once every 10 days or half a month, now she would think of him once every 2 or 3 days. Especially the image of Jiang Hai asking her to sign the divorce agreement. It was an image that she could not forget for a long time. This didn't mean that she had fallen in love with Jiang Hai, but this feeling made her very uncomfortable. It was like a doll that was originally hers. Although she didn't like it, it was still hers. But suddenly one day this doll had its own soul and no longer belonged to her. She had to take the initiative to draw a clear line between them. This was something she couldn't accept. Especially the feeling of being dumped, it made her very angry. Chili had been very strong since she was young. The only time she had been in a relationship was when she dumped someone else. Now that she was dumped, she felt extremely unbalanced in her heart. This made her feel that she had been humiliated. Even if it was a divorce, she should be the one dumping Jiang Hai. Why should Jiang Hai dump her? Therefore she started to understand Jiang Hai's past, his present, and even his sly friends. She asked for Fu Yuan and the others' WeChat numbers from Jiang Hai's former class monitor. Then she asked her assistant to add her. Fu Yuan and the others naturally had no resistance to being added by a beautiful woman. They quickly added each other. Every day this girl saw their WeChat moments clearly. Obviously, Jiang Hai did not know that his brothers had become traitors. Director Chi, I think so too. These guys really know how to enjoy life. I don't even have such a big lobster. Cough. President Chi doesn't eat it often. This girl with glasses had seen a lot with Chi Li, but this was the first time she had seen the things in the photo. I cough. Alright, the woman I asked you to investigate recently. Have you found anything? Hearing this, Chi Li could not help but cough lightly. She subconsciously wanted to say that she had not eaten it either, but fortunately she stopped in time. Found it? Her name is Feng Yunshin. She is a print model. We found that she seems to be Lu Xingyang's mistress. Hearing Chi Li's words, the girl with glasses immediately took out Feng Yunshin's information from her pocket and handed it over. A mistress? Arrange it, I'll treat her to a meal. Chi Li glanced at the document, narrowed her eyes and said in a low voice. Treat her to a meal? Okay, where should we go? Hearing that Chi Li wanted to treat this woman to a meal, the girl with glasses was very confused. But as an assistant, she knew that she only needed to do things obediently, so she raised her head and asked. Seafood restaurant. Let's go eat lobster. After thinking for a while, she didn't know why the lobster in the photo just now appeared in Chi Li's mind. She casually picked up the coat on the boss chair and said as she walked out. Ever since she and Jiang Hai had some inexplicable relationship on the 29th, these days she and Jiang Hai seemed to have returned to the status of ordinary friends. Besides sending a New Year's message to Jiang Hai during the New Year, they had only sent 2 or 3 messages in total, and each time they spoke for a very short time. After about 5 or 6 messages, they went to do their own things. It was hard to say what the relationship between the two was, but after that night, it seemed that the originally estranged feelings were once again estranged. No one knew what was going on in Feng Yunshin's mind, but Jiang Hai really didn't think about her. On the 7th day of the new year, Feng Yunshin returned to the imperial capital because she had recently received a new job. As an internet celebrity, there were 4 main places to work. The first was CJ, the second was the various major car shows, the third was to shoot posters, take photos and pictorials, and the fourth was to be a spokesperson. Of course, their endorsement fees weren't high, and they weren't like those big stars endorsing makeup products, luxury goods, or even cars. Their endorsements were more for games, web-based games, and not those big productions. This kind of web-based game was very convenient to make, and it had been very popular in recent years. Hundreds of thousands of them were opened a year, and hundreds of thousands of them were closed. But these had nothing to do with Feng Yunshin. She only needed to come over and make a few coquettish poses, and then shout out an advertising slogan. What happened next had nothing to do with her. Tonight she had just finished all the production of the game. Feng Yunshin left the set after rejecting the lecherous director's invitation to dinner. But just as she walked to the street, a Bentley stopped in front of her. Miss Feng, our chairman invites you to dinner. The back door opened and the bespectacled girl walked out of the back seat of the car with a smile. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.